This on? Thank you. This is the meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. It's called Order. Is everyone on mute on the phone?
Jason Mumpower here.
Jay Moser here.
Just want to make sure everyone's mute because we are getting a bit of an echo. Sounds like we might have solved that. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being on the phone. We will be calling roll in just a second. Before we get fully moving forward, I would like to recognize Andrew Kingsnolber. He's been our student commissioner for the past year, so a little over a year, and we just wanted to appreciate his service on the commission. And we also like to welcome our new student member, Mr. Jacob Knight, who is in his master's program at Austin P. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yep. We will first call roll. For those joining virtually, just a reminder to please state whether there are others in the room. And Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Tara Scarlett.
Here.
Commissioner Whitney Allman.
Here.
Commissioner Evan Cope. Commissioner Jacob Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Pam Coben. Commissioner Jimmy Matlock. Commissioner Jay Moser. Commissioner Vernon Stafford.
Here.
Commissioner A.C. Wharton.
Here.
Commissioner DeKasha Witten. Secretary Trey Hargett.
Here with numerous people in the room with me.
Treasurer David Lillard.
Here.
Commissioner Nathan James.
Here.
Comptroller Jason Mumpower.
Here.
Chairwoman, you have 11 members present and 10 voting members present, and a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I would suggest one change to today's agenda. I'd like to move the executive director's report before the chair's report. With no questions or objections, I entertain a motion and a second to adopt the, thank you, Madam Secretary. Oh, do we have a second? I'm sorry. Second.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Commissioner Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Knight.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Commissioner Witten. Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. The next item is public comment. Dr. Smith, have we received any?
No.
Okay. Well, there you go. We will move on. I would like to recognize Dr. Deaton to come up and just thank you very much for inviting us to come here. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Russ Deaton, he is the amazing Executive Vice Chancellor at TBR, and you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Smith, members of the Commission. Welcome to the Tennessee Board of Regents. It's great to have you here. I bring greetings from Chancellor Tidings, who would not have missed this, but for many reasons at all, but her daughter's wedding is on that list, and so she sends her regrets today. It's a pleasure having you here. We obviously have some security weaknesses I'm going to check on later to have you all get in the building because they let in some shady characters here, I see. But no, it's good to be back with you. This feels a bit like coming home with having spent many years on the staff here, so I appreciate the chance to talk with you today. I want to go through a couple of things in the 5 minutes that we have before you begin your agenda today. You've got a lot of important topics today, but there are a couple of things that we wanted to bring to you from the Board of Regents that are examples of sort of the entrepreneurial innovation we're pursuing to solve challenges that are of common interest to all of us, things that both UT and the LGIs and TBR, THEC and others deal with every day. One of these will require some background, so I'm going to walk you through an idea, let you know what we're doing, and be happy to answer questions along the way. This first one is our ability to directly confront, to look in the eye, issues that we've been having these last 3 years from COVID and its spin-off effects, and respond to two dynamics which are ever present and are befuddling in many ways to many of us. One is the very urgent need to align effectively workforce dynamics and higher education academic programs. That's particularly acute at TBR, of course, being the system that directly trains people to go into the workforce a lot. It's true for all of higher ed. And the second part is the reality of our students' success metrics, which we'll get into in a moment here, but to confront those directly and to be honest about what we see that our students face. Before I get into the idea, as a general rule, what you're going to see is TBR's efforts to use our phrase, to reimagine the community college experience, which has an aim not to simply nibble around the edges that reform, but to, again, directly confront those two dynamics I just showed you to significantly increase degree production for our students, and importantly, connect them with careers that the economy, as you'll see, is begging for. A little bit of background here. Some of this will be familiar to you. This commission sees these data a lot, but as you know, our enrollment at the community colleges is down quite a bit. We are at the lowest level since 1990. There's been a bit of a divergence, perhaps, in the post-COVID story between what 4 years are experiencing and what our sector is experiencing. We are continuing to lose enrollment over the years. Hopefully that turns around this fall. At the same time, graduation rates tell a story that has some positive and negative aspects. If we were talking about 8 years ago, I would have had to report to you a first-time freshman graduation rate of 13%. Today, it sits at 26%. That's doubled. That's great news. We are proud of that progress. A lot of state policy effort and campus effort has gone into making that happen. But that is still unacceptably too low. And we are trying every day to improve that number. It doesn't tell the whole story about a community college. That graduation rate is important. Much more goes into how we think about our colleges and their success, dual enrollment, inbound transfer, returning adults. But we have a graduation rate challenge, particularly also with the equity gaps that exist by race, by gender, by income status, one of which you see here on the screen. If you were to dig in further, Madam Chair, to these graduation rates and look at just those students who need learning support, remediation in common parlance, the numbers are about 10%. That preparation challenge is significant, and it's one that we deal with every day. As well, you look further for a different question, and this question asks, how many of those freshmen who come into a community college ever get a bachelor's degree? Regardless of whether they take a path directly with an associate's degree, whether they transfer out after a semester or a few years, just looking at the end results. And you see that here broken down by ACT score. Overall, about 1 in 7 of our freshmen ever get a bachelor's degree, though most come in with that ambition, which you'll see here in a moment. Even among well-prepared students, that number is very low. Meanwhile, the economy is begging for what economists will call middle skill trained folks, those with somewhere between a bachelor's degree and a high school diploma. This chart is not meant at all to establish a dichotomy between 4-year degrees and 2-year degrees. It's meant to establish a contrast between post-secondary credentials and not having a credential. But the wheelhouse of TBR, those associates, certificates, and diplomas, which is precisely what the economy is begging for in Tennessee's jobs of the future. Contrast that, though, with that line across the bottom, which is, among our freshman class, 3/4 of those students come in with the intention of transferring, going on to a university. Some intentionally, some because that's just a default option. But there's a disconnect between that ambition, that profile, and what the economy needs. The economy definitely has an opinion about this. What you're seeing here are wages for TBR students who leave our system after 5 years, either because they have graduated or because they have dropped out. So we're excluding folks who graduated or transferred to a university and continue their studies. This is just contrasting graduates and non-graduates. At the top, you see that average wage, 5 years post-separation, for non-graduates, about $22,000. And then you begin to see the economy privileging those who have certain credentials at much higher wages. Though I would point out the very bottom bar, which is the university parallel, our lingo for the transfer credential, essentially. Those wages are the lowest among those who have a degree, and they're perilously close, in my judgment, to those who did not graduate at all. So there's something about the labor market that is making a very pronounced statement about how much it values students with certain credentials. So all of that as background led us to the reimagining community college idea, which at its essence includes these three pillars. And let's move left to right. If you boil all this down to what this idea is, it's contained in that first block, which is, why can't we, instead of a student taking remedial math and college algebra, English, and those general education courses immediately, why can't they put those off a semester or two? And their first semester is a foundational workforce ready certificate that connects to the local and regional economy, so that every student starts with that. That would then be connected and have its antecedents in career exploration and advising, which would increase resources for our colleges to be able to have personalized and in-depth career exploration and counseling, so that a student comes in and has good advice about what career to connect to, using tools which are commonly available, some of which my kids use in their middle school now, like Youth Science, an inventory of their skills, interests, abilities, that is then the substance of a conversation between an advisor and the student to then get them into that workforce ready certificate that first semester. And then importantly, have all of that be not an endpoint in and of itself, but again, to use our lingo, stackable, so that that workforce ready certificate in their first semester moves into any future credential the student wants. A transfer credential, which is difficult, an AAS degree, whatever it is, it's the first step on their journey to whatever path they so choose. That is the essence of the reimagining community college idea, which you can see on the screen here, contrasts quite simply but profoundly with the traditional experience. As we think through this, and there's a QR code on the screen, if you want to read more about this, you can snap a picture of that and it'll take you to our landing page. This fall, 4 of our colleges will pilot this idea at scale. So essentially all of their freshman class will be encountering now this idea. It's going to take a few years to fully take root, but this idea of reimagining what that first semester experience is like, what that encounter with the college is like, is changing a lot for these 4 colleges. They've been working year-round with us to make this happen. This concept was presented to our board last June. Within 6 weeks, we had a competitive RFP out to our colleges. Within a month, we had chosen winners, and 2 weeks later, we had grants signed. So in 3 months, went from an idea to our board to working with professionals at our colleges in the field trying to make this happen. We're excited about what this is going to portend for our students, and would really be excited about bringing back results to you in the near future. The second item, second of 2, don't worry, I'll stay within my allotted time, is similarly oriented. The philosophy is the same, which is how to attack the under-preparation challenge of our students. And we call this the Tennessee Coaching Project. We've got 2 colleges, Northeast and Jackson, who over the last year have been working with us to execute 2 grants that we competitively got, totaling about $3 million, the largest single project TBR has ever pursued, to put additional person power in the form of coaches in these 2 colleges, but with a different mission. Not just simply the transactional kind of day-to-day that you would do as an advisor, which is hugely important, but to help students, particularly those underprepared, think about career exploration, connecting their program to a future job, connecting with resources within the college and within the community to help them succeed, and how to succeed in the very courses in which they find themselves, these learning support or remediation courses, which can be challenging for students. We piloted this past year. It's a 3-year effort. We have a lot more to go. But the early results were so encouraging, we wanted to include them for you today. We showed this to our board at our last meeting, and on the right-hand side, you see these early results. As we look at those students, and they were organized in the statisticians in your staff will love this. This is a randomized control trial. This is an effort to establish a control group and then a treatment group, and really dig in statistically to understand what has changed, the results of which are on the right. Across every metric that mattered to us, persistence to the second semester, completion in those key gateway courses, those students who were selected for this engagement and actually actively engaged with their coach to receive this treatment showed marked improvements in those metrics. Now, this is not just descriptive. This is controlling for the other factors which might promote those same increases, academic preparation, those things. Taking those factors out, you still see the impact of the coaching project across these students. We're excited where this is going. Reason for caution here, you can one semester only, but as the years roll by with this effort, we hope this makes a big dent in the preparation and success problem. As one of our presidents said, this was Jeff McCord, and Jeff, if you're watching, thank you for this, but when we showed these results to him at Northeast, you're never quite sure how presidents will react to what you show, but he said, Russ, every single percentage point improvement in those metrics is incredibly hard-fought ground. And we are very proud of what they were able to do with those resources and show those improvements. Lastly, last slide, important to look back. I want to highlight 3 areas where THEC, the state, the governor have invested in TBR and a return has been established. 3 areas where strategic initiatives have been made in programs where we're seeing those flower and blossom. First is in student success technologies. You may recall last year the commission supported our recommendation to establish funding for 2 different bits of technology which help the student experience, a customer relationship manager, CRM, and a comprehensive learner record, CLR. Both of those, which really allow our staffs at our colleges to much more intentionally recruit and serve students, will be fully implemented at the initial phase for all colleges within this academic year. So we are using that money to great effect and excited where that's going. Secondly, 2 years ago, the commission also helped support our efforts to seed money for competency-based education. The idea that we don't measure success in learning based on seat time, based on a 3-hour class. Instead, it is, what have you learned? What can you demonstrate that you've mastered? Those small resources, $600,000, have now allowed us, by the end of this year we're in, we will have over 100 courses offered in that format, and 6 of our colleges will have full CBE, competency-based education programs, at students' disposal by this time next fall. They're at the final stages of completing those now. And then, of course, finally, the TCAT capacity expansion. This is something that I know the Commission's talked a lot about. With the resources that were given, we have dramatically expanded both faculty lines, programs, equipment, pulling many students off of a wait list and into educational programs immediately, over 2,000 because of those investments. Madam Chair, I hope that's brief enough. I want to run through those items for you. Happy to answer questions, but most importantly, welcome and thank you all for being here in our house today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deaton. Appreciate you being here. Always learn something from you whenever I see you present, so appreciate it. Does the Commission have any questions for Russ? Yes, Nathan?
I do, if we've got just a couple of minutes. So one of the things that I've asked about in the past, and I'm always interested, especially from TBR's point of view, is to talk a little bit about the asterisks placed on the transfer pathways and how the transfer pathways have changed over the last several years. I've also got a question on middle college and engineering.
Gotcha. So at the context here, Nathan, good question. The Tennessee transfer pathways established in 2010 by statute, which require essentially all the 4-year, 2-year pathways to effectively be ironed out for students. There are exceptions often to those pathways, thus, and I can hear Julie Roberts twinkling in the background here. There are exceptions to those at times, the asterisks. In my judgment, they have proliferated way too much. No one's fault. It's something that's the collective fault of all of us, and we've got to streamline those for students who right now don't always see that pathway. One data point to give you an example of our students who graduate with a transfer credential, and Amy, correct me here, I think it's over half are not on a transfer pathway, the official TTP. They're on a general education or just a generic pathway, university parallel, because they couldn't work out the asterisks. They're still transferring, they still hope to go to a university, but they're not on the TTP. That's a problem. That's got to get fixed, and it's a responsibility of all of us to fix that.
Well, it was a different life, but when the statutory language got worked out, I remember when the THEC institutions came to the table.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fireworks. It was fireworks around the state. You talk about a serious move forward. I mean, other states, when they have 4 or 5 transfer pathways,
Right.
That's massive. And for us to have the number that we had, we're pretty
It's a huge
extraordinary.
accomplishment. Amen.
Now, that having been said, in conversation with some universities, the point is made that the engineering majors are having to redo classes because of algebra-based engineering at the community college level, as opposed to a calculus focus. And so that is to say, I don't want to, we have constant and gosh, very in-depth conversations as far as the K-12 side to recognize that the middle college programs and the opportunities for your institutions to be co-located at our high schools, working with these students so that they come out with a high school diploma and the ability to make a living. And that ability to make a living comes through your institutions and these universities out here. So I don't want to just sweep to one side the university's concerns. It has been brought up that the community college is using more of an algebra-based engineering focus as opposed to a calculus focus. Can you tell me about that and let me know, is there something that TBR is doing or is undertaking to kind of get those things aligned so that nobody has to spend the extra time to redo courses that they thought they had covered in their associates?
It's a good question. It's a worthy effort. I'm not sure I can speak to the curricular details you cite. I do know, and Dr. Reed, our CAO, is here. Perhaps offline we can go deeper in this. I do know that every time a TTP is developed or changed, faculty from both 4-year and 2-year are at that table, and TACUA. So those decisions are usually made collaboratively, and therefore they can be solved collaboratively. So I think there's a path forward, but we can talk offline more about that.
Happy to do that. And also, could you tell us, do you know what the percent of graduates at TBR have gone through or participated in a middle college program? So as I travel the state, there's more and more all the time, and they're really impressive. So.
I'm going to both guess and also turn around to the folks who probably know the answer on the back row. I'm going to guess, Amy, it's very, very low, because the middle college graduate number is maybe a few hundred at best, and our graduates in any given year at the community colleges are 15,000 students. Okay. So that'd be 2% off the top of my head.
Appreciate the indulgence, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? I learned something recently, Russ, that middle colleges can only be set up by community colleges. Why can TCATs not do the same thing?
Well, it's a good question, and some of this is going to get into the particular ways that middle college is defined. The idea that a TCAT goes into partners with an LEA for a credential, I'm pretty sure TCAT Dixon does. If anyone wants to nod along, yeah, I've seen some nods. So that concept, perhaps it's the common noun middle college rather than the proper noun middle college, is executed. I think statute, if I remember right, speaks to a public 2-year institution, and therefore perhaps that was inadvertent when it was built a few years ago when it was created. So I think there's ability that probably ought to get changed. We have TCATs who want to do that, and we have LEAs who have that demand. So I think that's something for policy to take a look at.
Curious.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and
Sure.
Thank you very much for allowing us to make use of this space. It's very beautiful, so thanks for having us.
Glad y'all are here. Thank you, ma'am.
Next up, we have the approval of the minutes from May 11th. With no questions or objections, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adopt the minutes from May 11th. Okay, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Commissioner Witten, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to move on to the approval of the minutes from the June 21st meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion and a second. So moved.
Second.
Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Commissioner Witten, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 9 ayes and 1 abstention.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And we're going to move on to the July 11th minutes. I'm looking for a motion and a second on those. Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Commissioner Winton. Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
All right. Thankfully, we have no more minutes to approve. Next up on the agenda, we have the Executive Director's Report. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Bob Smith for his report.
And I'm going to start my report by turning it over to Dr. Stephen Gentile, who is going to talk to you about some important data.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn over to one of my colleagues now. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Director Smith, and colleagues, thank you for this opportunity. I talked to Dr. Smith about presenting some updates on what my team has been doing under his leadership. My favorite thing about Director Smith's leadership since starting here in January is you come with him with an idea, and he's like, yes, let's do that. Let's see how we can do that. Let's study that. Let's implement that. And so today, I would like to review some of the things that are on my team's plate. Again, I oversee policy, planning, and research, which includes 4 senior directors over data services, general policy and effectiveness, fiscal policy, and research and strategy. We have a lot on our plate. We always do, but I want to update you on some key areas that we're focusing on right now. Talk to you about our latest report on college going for the class of 22, revisit a graduation rate discussion that we had back in May with this commission, update you on some statistics and where we're headed right now, and a report in response to Chairman Scarlett's request back in May, and talk through our data strategy efforts that are underway right now at THEC. So first, a year ago, we were the first state in the country to release a college-going rate report based on the class of 2021, looking at what's happened during the pandemic. Not unique to Tennessee, as you'll recall, the college-going rate plummeted in Tennessee as it did across the country. And we put out a report to shine a spotlight on that decline. We had gone from a high, as you can see there, in the low to mid 60s, with Tennessee Promise bumping us up over that time, all the way down to, for the class of 2021, 52.8% going on to college. Now, again, these are public high school seniors. We are able to track when they enroll in any one of our public institutions, most of our private institutions, thanks to data coming in from TECUA. And then also, due to the National Student Clearinghouse, we can track students' enrollment across state lines, from private colleges and public colleges in Kentucky to private colleges and public colleges in Washington, the state of Washington. This past year, we gathered enough information on our senior cohort from the class of 2022, which is about 63,000 students, which is up about 1.8% from the prior year cohort, class of 2021. So 63,000 students, and we were able to track an increase of just over 1.5% in our college going for the class of 2022. So a rebound from the depths of the pandemic. We see this as unqualifying good news. It's still low. We're nowhere near where we were before the pandemic. But that percentage point increase equates to about 1,000 more high school seniors going on to college than did so back in the class of 2021. We can also disaggregate this by many different populations. One that we've looked at in the past and will today are the disparities by race between white and black students, white and Hispanic students. For general context, we have about 12,500 black students that were in the class of 2022 and about 6,500 Hispanic students in the class of 2022. From pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, for where we are right now, the class of 2022, we did see the ranges narrow between white students and black students, getting to its narrowest gap since the class of 2019. We also saw that narrow for Hispanic students as well, as both of these populations, black and Hispanic, had larger growths in college going than the general population. That said, it's important to note these disparities. If these rates were the same, if the black student college going rate was the same as white students, we'd have about 1,500 more black students in college this year. With Hispanic students, if it was the same rate, it'd be about 1,400 more Hispanic students in college this year. So we always like to track the disparities to see if they're narrowing or widening, but it's important to know what that gulf means as well. Last year's report ignited the Momentum Year 2023 with our College Access and Success team leading the way on behalf of THEC. We wanted to arrest that decline from the class of 21 to focus more on getting that rate up, back to where we were before the pandemic. So the first goal of the Momentum Year for the high school class of 2023, so the ones who just graduated and will be enrolling in just a couple of weeks now into college, the goal is to get that up to 60%. Now, mind you, we jumped 1.5 percentage points this past year with no efforts happening at the state that were as targeted as this year. So we'll get to start to know in early September where the 14th day enrollment is for our institutions, for our public institutions. We will share that out with you guys as soon as we collect them from the institutions. And then in about 3 or 4 months is when we'll be able to collect more about our private institutions and those that are out of state. There are other elements of the Momentum Year as well, with adult students wanting to re-engage adult students with our Reconnect Navigate team and the great work that Jessica Gibson does, as well as be sure that we are aligning our academic programs with the workforce with the great work that Julie and her team does in academic affairs. But looking back at the class of 2023, what were some indicators that we got that might suggest we're in a good spot going into this fall? We had a number of Momentum Year activities across the state where we gathered our higher education institution partners as well as our college access partners to realign and row in the same direction and propose ideas for how we can get the enrollment back up. Two big things I want to highlight right here is that thanks to the great work that our agency has done in collaboration with our partnering agencies, Tennessee Achieves, Partnering Groups, and AIRS Foundation, we now have the highest application pool for Tennessee Promise that we've had in the whole history of the program, about 64,500. That is a great sign that we're going in the right track. Also, Tennessee tends to lead the nation in FAFSA filing. We jumped from 72.8% of high school seniors filing the FAFSA to 74.1, equating to about 1,500 more high school seniors filling out the FAFSA this year. So this bodes well for where we would be going this August in college enrollment. I also want to talk to you guys today about graduation rates. When Crystal Collins was up here in front of you back in May talking about tuition, this group had a number of really excellent questions with regards to graduation rates and where we are as a state. And Chairwoman Scarlett asked for us to do a report into best practices, and we're working on that, and I'll talk about where that's going right now. But to better answer some of the questions that were posed in front of us back in May, I want to talk to you guys about the rates that we collect, why we collect what we do, and what we're able to see, getting a chance to look into the different institutions. First of all, our go-to rate tends to be the 6-year graduation rate for our university sector specifically, and also our community college sector. I often get the question, why? Why are we focusing on 6-year graduation rate when aren't students supposed to finish in 4 years of a university sector or 2 years at a community college? The real reason goes back to 1990. Sit back and I'll tell you a story of the history there. But there was a federal act, the Student Right to Know and the Campus Security Act, that was really looking at athletic graduation rates. Athletes, when are they graduating? Are schools doing well by their athletes? And with 5 years eligibility, the rate that was being submitted to the federal government was moved from 5 years to 6 years. That's how today, all the data that we collect and send on to the federal government and that we collect for our own uses focuses on 6 year. It goes back 33 years ago to a focus on college athletes. That's all well and good. But it's important to us, and the commission has been pushing us on this, and we are all fans of this as well, is to focus more about on-time completion. Our students who are starting off full-time with the intent of getting a credential able to do so in what is normally considered full-time. But first, I'm going to unpack the 6-year graduation rate, the numbers that we tend to collect and share with you guys. This is a trend line looking at the 6-year graduation rate cohorts from the class, the entering class of 2006 all the way through 2016. 2016, why that? That's because fast forward 6 years, that's the data that we have right now. for the class of 2022. We're able to track up through that time right now. Looking at the university sector, you do see an increase of 58% to 63% in the university sector over that 10-year period. And to situate you properly, that's about 20,000 students in the university sector as first-time, full-time freshmen. With a 63% graduation rate, that means within 6 years, about 12,500 are graduating with a credential. In the community college sector, the first-time, full-time cohort is about 19,000 students. With a 35% graduation rate, it's about 6,500 students who are graduating with a credential within 6 years. About 12,500 who are not. Much like with college going, we are able to track students who start off at any one of our public institutions and get a credential from any institution that we get. So private, public, out of state, through the National Student Clearinghouse. So these rates reflect not just students graduating from their home institution, but who transfer on elsewhere and get a credential elsewhere. I highlight that middle bar right there. You see a substantial increase from 2011 to 2016 for both sectors. That's about a 7 percentage point increase. Holding those rates constant at 63%, that equates to about 1,500 more students graduating per year for each sector with that rate increase. 2011 is not just the middle point of this 11-year history, it's also when a lot of our Complete College Tennessee Act policies came into place. So the transfer pathways that Nathan brought up earlier, our focus on making sure that our sectors are aligned, and most importantly, our outcomes-based funding formula. Conceived in 2010, implemented in 2011, you can see a correlative match here that when those went into place, graduation rates started to go up over time. So moving in the right direction, but as Dr. Deaton said, 35%, 63%, those are still low, and we need to address those. Looking at the class of 2016, we can show you graduation rates over the years, so how many students were able to get out in 2 years, 3 years, all the way up to 6 years. And you can see that upward slope, of course, as it makes sense. I want to focus on 2 rates in particular. One is the on-time completion. How many students are completing what we would consider on time, 2 years in the community college sector, 4 years in the university sector. And it's low. 12% in our community college sector, just 42% in our university sector. And that ranges from, I believe, 24% at Tennessee State University up to 58% at UT Knoxville. The LGIs as a cohort are in the low 40s, I believe, and UT as a system is in the low 50s. Looking at a more common measure, the 150% completion, and this is what Dr. Deaton was showing to you guys earlier with the community college sector specifically. We see just about a quarter of our community college students are receiving a credential within 3 years of starting, and 63% as the number I've already showed you for our university sector. You might remember Dr. Deaton showed you 26% for a 3-year graduation. Minding you, I'm looking at the cohort of 2016. He showed cohort of 2019, which shows growth for sure in that sector, in that measure. And also his rate was just looking at TBR community colleges, I believe. So there does seem to be a good upward trajectory in their graduation rate from what we see from the class of 2016. So again, this is the full scope. Every single one of these measures can tell you something interesting, but really for us, for in higher ed policy, state policy, institution policy, it's more about changing the conversation, because I would like for us to, rather than focus on 6-year graduation rate, think more about on-time completion rates. And so Chairwoman Scarlett asked us back in May to pull together a report that looks at graduation rates and best practices. We have a draft of that right now, and I hope in the coming weeks to be able to share that out broadly. What that shows are some state comparisons, some trends over time, and policy options that are available to the commission to implement. An example there would be moving from a 6-year graduation rate to a 4-year graduation rate in the outcomes-based funding formula. putting in a graduation rate for the community college sector. There's not one right now. And the primary reason why is because the majority of students that they serve are not full-time. But still, that is a policy option that's out there. We can't underestimate the power of convening as well. To think that the rates are low and the institutions don't care is not true. They do care, and they're all working on their own practices to implement to increase graduation rates. What are good ideas that we can share across the state? With our convening authority, we can help bring that conversation to the fore. And also, Chairman Scarlett, you asked us to look into funding adequacy. The question of, are our institutions funded sufficiently or not? Or are they overfunded in order to meet the goals of the state? We started to socialize this conversation. We convened with the community college chief business officers a few weeks ago, with the university and TBR CFOs last week to think through how to do this. I'm pleased to say that we just hired a director of fiscal policy, Julia Arns Hoffman, who's a rock star out of North Carolina. Really happy for her to join our team. This is one of the projects that we're going to focus her on early on to answer the funding adequacy question, tying that back to graduation rates. Are there any questions about things I've presented so far? Or concerns or thoughts? Okay. Got one more thing I'd like for us to run through, and I'm going to ask our Senior Director, Amanda Clefane, to come up and present. I'd say this slide deck right here is certainly for your review and your knowledge, but also the institutions in the audience. I'd like for you to pay attention if you can, please, at this part. If you haven't already, maybe you have, but sorry. The data strategy, where we're moving on data strategy. Back in January, in his executive director report, Director Smith said, what we need as an agency is to move from just doing historical record gathering on data and be data prognosticators. Well, we've worked with him and our team to implement a data strategist to bring forward to modern day processes so that we can better collect and capture the data that can help inform your decisions. I'd like for our Senior Director, Amanda Clefane, to speak more to that.
Good morning, Chairman Scarlett, Director Smith, members of the Commission. As Stephen mentioned, and as you saw with the various slides around graduation rate, we want to really think as an agency about how we can improve procedures and documentation for collecting, ingesting, using, and sharing the data that we have. We want to really think of that data as a resource that not only we have to share with you all, but also in collaboration with our institutions, who are key providers of that information. We need to know what we measure, what we want to measure, and how we want to measure it. And that involves close collaboration with our institutions who are collecting this data on the ground and sharing that up with us so that we can inform policy and set direction, as Stephen and Dr. Smith have mentioned. So with that, THEC appointed the first data strategist that our agency has had, Dr. Jacob Kamer, who is in the audience today, to really bring organization to this work. What you'll see on the right side of the screen here is a sort of a template there that looks at or really explains what is our Data Strategy Council. It is made up of members of the Policy, Planning, and Research Bureau, as well as our legal staff, to help really, like I said, bring a framework to some of this work. Over the past several months, this group has met to discuss the purpose and the scope of data strategy at THEC, and also to clarify assumptions that we might have throughout the agency around what the data is and how we can use it. We've also determined the principles for this group, what we want to do to ensure shared understanding, not only for ourselves, but for our staff, and then for those who are consuming and using this data. And as this work has ultimately led to the creation of a charter, which we anticipate bringing before you all in November to review and approve, so that we can pull together this work formally into THEC policy. We're really excited about the progress that's been underway in this space, and there are a few tangible examples that this council has worked on that impact our practice. The first focuses on the collection of the out-of-state Pell information, which is something that is used in our funding formula to better capture those students who come to Tennessee to get their education and are Pell eligible. THEC TSAC does not currently receive that data through our other sources. And so this has been a mechanism by which we can better capture some of the work our institutions are doing and moving those students to and through college. In addition, there are a lot of conversations around employment outcomes for our graduates. This group has also contemplated the collaboration with other groups to get out-of-state employment data. This would help us better understand those students who are educated in Tennessee and go beyond our state borders. This is really relevant as we think about the location of our state, the fact that we border so many other states and that many of our metropolitan areas are right along those borders. So we're really excited about the work that is happening here and look forward to bringing that charter to you all in November. But what I also want to talk a little bit about today is some of the other responsibilities that the research and strategy team head up. So we are responsible for a lot of data analysis and reporting, and our team produces several annual reports. And in recent years have been really thinking about these reports as vehicles for innovation. We want to continue to think about how we get key information to stakeholders, whether that's the legislature, whether that's governor's office, our institutions, this commission, and others. So what you'll see here on the left is a quick snapshot of our lottery scholarship report landing page. We have begun developing additional resources to accompany some of our reports. Some might be familiar with some of those lengthy printed PDF documents, which I think a lot of us love, but may not be super consumable for all audiences. We've developed data dashboards as a means to allow users to dig more into that data, to disaggregate that data, to look at different trends over time. And we're really excited about that work. We've also begun developing data downloads. This is another means by which we're communicating largely with our audiences who really like to dig in and play around with pivot tables and other things to provide more granularity to the data that we report. This is really important when we think about communicating to high school superintendents, CTE directors, and those in our communities. In particular, Stephen mentioned the college-going work. This is a snapshot here of our college-going report landing page where folks can download data sets by high school, looking at the college-going rates over time in those communities. And finally, we've established recently a listserv, which is designed to help us improve how we are communicating with our stakeholder groups. This was just launched back in the spring, and I would encourage everyone in this room to sign up if you're interested. But the goal here is really to ensure that the releases of not only those reports, but those other data resources get out to the stakeholders who may be using them. And then finally, I want to share one thing that is coming down the pike in the next few months. We are planning to release a blog. And that is going to be aimed at sharing quick bites of information and visuals with our audiences. So again, I love reports, but that's one kind of a behemoth thing to look at. The idea with this is not only to communicate quick bites of information for our audiences around the report work that we do, but also to highlight what other new, interesting, and important research our team is taking on. Some of those day-to-day analyses that we were asked to complete, whether that's to inform a presentation, to inform a fiscal note, other things like that, thinking through the ways that we can communicate and share those findings out to you all. So with that, I would say keep an eye out in the coming weeks for the release of that blog and would encourage you all to sign up for our listserv. Thank you.
I know, data strategy, exciting, right? I just want to say a big reason for our institutions to know more about this as well is the graduation rate data that we were showing earlier does not show UT Southern. The data we get from our LGIs all come to us via TBR, the Tennessee Board of Regents. We want to use this process here to get the data that we need from UT Southern, and UT has been a very good partner there. But this data strategy helps us wrap our minds around there. We're also going to use this data strategy council to help finally sever our LGIs from TBR to submit data directly to us. So I want to thank you guys today for this, giving me the opportunity. If there are any questions or concerns, I'm happy to field those now.
Dr. Gentile and Amanda, thank you so much for the presentation. Just one quick question. Data is so important. Are there any challenges or obstacles you have to getting comprehensive data, or is there anything that complicates our process in being able to share good information?
I think the complicating aspect, first of all, our partners are very, very, very friendly and great partners to us. So University of Tennessee, working with Brian Hester there, TBR, working with Chris Tingle, who reports to Russ Deaton here, and then Takua under Claude Fresnel. These are where we get our data from. They're all great partners. And if there's a limitation, it's not on want on their end. It's more about how do we properly define what it is we're trying to collect. We've got 50 different institutions across the state, and there is some unifying efforts there, but that's the biggest challenge, is what are the right definitions. The different systems that they use to pull data, Banner at our TBR and LGI institutions, or SAP at UT, how can we use that language to define what we need? I'd say those are the limitations. It's not the personnel. They're all great partners to us.
I have a question somewhat related, Stephen, tied to the data piece. I understand we have a lot of legacy systems in and around government. When was the last time we did a full overhaul of the systems to ensure that we actually have brought it up to current day and age?
Yeah, I want to thank Jason Cavender and his team, Mee Jones and Randall Dufresne here as well for working with our student information system. Anamika Mazumdar, my Director of Data Services. That's an ongoing conversation. Recently done with our financial aid system under FAST, and Josh Moran's been leading that up with Mee Jones in that aspect. But for our student information system, we've got some aspects that go back decades. And so we're working with Jason Cavender and his team and hiring contractors to help bring forward what we need to there. It is always certainly a concern when you hear about data breaches in other states. I'm really happy to say that our system here has a lot of great controls to ensure that we don't lose access to data. But we are working on some old systems too. And so one by one, we're trying to tackle those as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Please.
Of course.
To recognize Randy Boyd for anyone that doesn't know him.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for the commission, I wanted to make sure that you're aware that 2 years ago, thanks to the state, we were awarded $150 million to all the UT campuses and the LGIs to create a new ERP system. So now we're all having a unified platform on all of our back office stuff that we use with our ERP system. We're becoming unified on that information, but most of what THEC is looking for is our student-facing data. We're looking at potentially a new student information system or SIS system. It's going to take probably 3 years to implement, but it's something that we're all working on. We're working on it through the UT system, and we hope that maybe our LGIs will be able to partner with us on that as well. I can say within the UT system, collecting data is problematic because each campus collects data differently at different times. People use different data definitions. So when THEC asks us to get data, our team works really hard to be able to get all this data and make it make sense. But with this SIS system, it could be transformational for us and for THEC and then for you. So I just want to let you know that this is in process. Thank you.
That's exciting. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, hi. Chairperson Scarlett and commission members, I have one slide to show you. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about it. So that's the positive and the negative. And I'll begin by saying that about, 3 weeks ago, the Executive Vice Chancellor Deaton and I were on a panel in front of the research, institutional research people, and it was one of the best experiences that I've had because of how engaged the two of us were in talking with the institutional research people about data and about where things are going. And in fact, what you're going to find is that we probably ought to be tag teaming this presentation because a lot of what he said this morning is going to tie in very much. When we had our workshop, we had a presentation from NCHEMS, and then we had a presentation from Celeste Crothers, Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research, and they talked about some of these same things. The NCHEM slide really appealed to me because it appeared that something happened in 2008, 2010 that I've been giving a lot of attention to for a number of years. because it was portrayed in the media pretty much as the housing bubble. And I found that hard to believe, because on the outside of that, we started talking about a transformation in job growth. And that's proven to be a better definition of what happened in the recession of 2008, 2010, than to just talk about what happened in housing. There was a phenomenal upheaval in the job market of shedding jobs that were at the low income areas, a lot of that through automation and through other kinds of things. And there was a real explosion of jobs that required advanced education. But the NCHEM slide ended in 2016. And so I asked Stephen Gentile to find what the data are for more modern times, but then also translate that in terms of Tennessee, because that's who we are responsible for. And so this slide picks up from 2008, thanks to Dr. Gentile, all the way through to 2022, and it goes through both the recession of 2008, 2010, and then also what was a recession in 2021 for a short period of time that's often referred to as the COVID-19 recession. And what we see here is that those people who had better education thrived through these periods of time. And so as I begin to translate this slide, the first part of it is the title, Recession-Proofing the Tennessee Economy. Because this is the opportunity that Tennessee faces now in order to invest in an outcome that actually matters, because it transcends the recession periods. And so let's go down through the lines here. The green line, the bottom line here, are those people who have a high school or less. And you'll notice that from that period, and in fact, this is part of why it occurred to me years ago that this was about job transformation, the sudden drop in jobs between 2009 and 2010, in which you could get a job with just a high school education. And in fact, through this period of time, the Tennessee economy has lost 90,000 jobs after those two recessions. Not all of those are going to be made up by Buc-ee's. The middle line is those who had an associate degree or some college. And by virtue of the way in which we collect data for this, we're not able to tease out the elements of that. What we do know is that in that line of associate degrees or some college are the THECs. And I would also say there are 635,000 Tennesseans who have some college and no credential. And you'll notice that in that line, there was a gain of 49,000 jobs after the two recessions. I would point out that the governor's investment in the capitalization of TCATs is going to change that line, because it appears that capacity was as much a factor in dampening down the creation of the jobs because we couldn't move enough people through. And so his emphasis in this last year to address the brick and mortar issues associated with that ought to move that line in future years up. Part of our challenge is we need to then move people in the pipeline that fill and actually, if we can, create pressure for more of that kind of investment, because what it means to Tennessee. The largest gain, 361,000 new jobs through two recessions, are those with bachelor's degrees or higher. That matches Dr. Carruthers' data as well. In her case, she was emphasizing higher paying jobs, clean jobs, and wage jobs. And today, Dr. Deaton presented the same trends through the wages. The reason I've picked jobs is because that is the end product. It isn't about or sufficient to say that it is college graduation or achieving a post-secondary credential. It is translating that post-secondary credential into a meaningful job. And that is why I think that in terms of our vision moving forward, we're talking better education, better careers, better lives. The drive to 55 was a very, very smart strategy. And there are detractors who say, yeah, but that's passé, that's gone. And I'd hate to see that. I mean, it is true that the concept of reaching 55 and 25 may be problematic, but we knew that when it was created originally. What is not problematic, it is the right strategy to increase the number of post-secondary educated people in Tennessee. And from that strategy and sticking to the importance of increasing those degrees, then we're really talking about better education, better careers, better lives. The way in which that is being done is already in place in Tennessee now and needs to be further exploited and expanded as we go through. One of them is the phenomenon of blurring the line between when a person is in high school and when they're in a post-secondary experience. I mean, we do get a lot of clatter, particularly driven by media reports that, well, why do you need college? You can always get a job. Notice they don't say a career, without going on to college. And that's a tough argument to fight when people with a high school degree can go out into the marketplace and get a pretty decent hourly rate job. But the problem with that is that just as has occurred in the past 20 years, there is tremendous momentum to automate those jobs and to make those things disappear. And Tennessee's been through that. For those of us who were in Tennessee in the late 80s and the 90s, we marketed our economy based on low wages. And then we went out to attract businesses to come to Tennessee, set up their manufacturing plants, and take advantage of a workforce that was dedicated, that had good job ethics, but did so for very, very low wages. And West Tennessee absolutely experienced that, mainly in the garment industries. What happened, however, is when you base an economy upon low wages, then the next low wage provider wins out. And that happened. It happened moving into Latin America, moving into South America, going to China, going to other places, and then all of that market crashed, and we're still, 20 years later, suffering the consequences of low employment rates and other debilitating factors in not only West Tennessee, but pockets of the rest of Tennessee. So it is not an effective strategy to build an economy upon low wages, but it is a smart strategy to build it upon a knowledge workplace. And that's what we want to be about. But that's a tough sell. It's an easier sell if the individual transitions into a post-secondary experience while they're still in high school and then realize, I can do this and this can be of value to me. And basically what I'm saying is dual enrollment is a gift that will continue to give and improve the economy for Tennessee. We want more moments when a student walks across the high school stage and is handed their diploma and then steps across a stage at a TCAT or at a community college or even a four-year institution and receives a certificate as well or some sort of a credential. But the way we're dealing with dual enrollment is far more happenstance and less well organized than it needs to be in order to be effective to that end. Dual enrollment has to become programmatic, not random collection of credits. And those awards that need to be made when they occur during the dual enrollment experience, not 4 years later when a person graduates. In fact, that's exactly what the Reimagining the Community College program is all about, is to give that young person a positive experience by the end of the first semester with a workforce certificate or some other kind of certification that says, I've got it, I've accomplished something. When we know delayed gratification is not going to work by saying, just think, 6 years from now, you'll be able to graduate and have all of this. But to do that, not only do we need to be more programmatic, more organized in the dual enrollment, we need to have a broader emphasis on what those credentials are, which would include micro-credentials, stacked credentials, and particularly industry-recognized certificates and badges. Just this month, Texas announced the Texas Credentials for the Future, which they laud as the most comprehensive industry-recognized micro-credential program in the country. They have a goal in Texas of preparing every interested student as well as faculty, staff, and alums for the state workforce demands at no extra cost to them. It depends on how you feel. I just don't want Texas to outdo Tennessee on something that would be absolutely advantageous to us as well. So for the past several months, I've been visiting campuses on a second rotation around and with the chancellors at those campuses. And I made it to almost every one of them. I sat with the leadership and I've been inspired by the pockets of opportunities that are there. I was already aware of the extraordinary work that TBR was doing. I wanted to know what are our four-year institutions doing as well. And among those things that I was inspired by was at Austin Peay State University, the new, raise your hand, President. The new Professional and Workforce Development Center is a truly innovative and inspiring opportunity to break down traditional institutional barriers to deliver workforce essentials. MTSU, and sorry, President McPhee, for announcing here something you're going to announce in your opening conversation with the faculty this month. But MTSU is beginning a badging program of both credit and non-credit that might reach every academic department. And then I was in Johnson City and sat with the ETSU leadership, and there was a faculty member there that we would want to clone across all of the faculty in all of our institutions, regardless of sector. Because what he had done within his program is embed 4 nationally certified credentials in the program that the students earn and they receive in progress to their degree, what I'd call degree plus. Graduate with a degree and also have 4 stacked credentials that are recognized by industry moving into those sectors. None of this is coordinated nor scaled statewide. They're just pockets of where opportunities to recession-proof the Tennessee economy need to be addressed. Without THEC's role, these things can't be maximized to the full benefit of Tennesseans. Our rising students and their parents in particular want better education, better careers, better lives. But we're battling a mindset in this state of either or. And that is either you go to a TCAT or to a community college or a 4-year, and then that is your track. Why can't it be and? Why can't someone start at a TCAT and already be set in a transfer pathway that leads into a 4-year institution? In my conversations with the presidents and chancellors and their leadership, I said, why aren't you collaborating with TCAT such that, for example, your Bachelor of Electrical Engineering people not only are pursuing their bachelor's degree, but pick up a workforce certificate or more from a TCAT. And I'd said this in front of us twice now, and I'm always sort of fascinated by his reaction to this. I think that what TCATs are doing are amazing, and why our institutions don't basically bring them on to their campus and allow what our students and their families want anyway in collaborative programs. It's perfectly fine for TCATs to continue to get credit for all of that. It's a win-win to the institution, to TCAT, but it's a win-win-win to the families and to the students. And it is a win-win-win-win to the Tennessee economy. Well, it isn't going to happen without robust transfer pathways. And you've heard 2 speakers already talk about some of the difficulties that we have with transfer pathways. On September the 29th, THEC is going to have a transfer initiative collaboration in which we already have a lot of people invited, and it is going to feature leading authority John Gardner, who is more famously known for what he's done with the first-year experience, but is also an expert on transitioning statewide transfer pathway programs. Having the curriculum in place, the right emphasis on state needs isn't sufficient either. Helping students, both young and adult students, navigate from high school to post-secondary is needed, which is the second element that is in place in Tennessee that has to be further expanded and further exploited. And that is that we have these advising programs to help families work their way through the transition from high school into post-secondary experiences. They're currently being offered by us as Advise TN and by other nonprofit organizations such as the Ayers Foundation, Tennessee Achieves, Niswonger, and others as well. These are all based upon completely different models, successful. They answer for the student and their family, what is next, how can I do it, how do I navigate all of the pathways and move seamlessly from that high school experience into the dual enrollment, into the first year fully in a post-secondary program. But none of these programs is fully comprehensive, and there are still gaps that exist across the state. And we intend to propose to the Commission in the next few weeks a comprehensive, coordinated response to our obligation to meet those statewide needs. I think you could be assured the evidence is in front of us that this is the direction that the state needs to go. This is the nature of the state master plan for education. This is the reason that THEC is, along with Chancellor Tidings, the only voice for education in front of workforce groups, in front of labor, in front of economic and community development, and the other engaged entities that are all working to the same end to increase and create a successful Tennessee economy. Because what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for them to deliver better education, better careers, and better lives. Now, with your permission, Madam Chair, I address another issue. August 2023, August of any year is kind of a special year for me because, as any of the people behind me would say, there's kind of a re-energizing when people are going back to school, or back engaging in seeing students on campus, the thrill of move-in, where those would be the cases. And 55 years ago, I started that experience, and this is my 55th anniversary in some role of higher education in a professional capacity. So August is always kind of a special month. Announcing to you that I'm ending this stage of my career is difficult because of my deep appreciation for the opportunity that this commission gave to me and the trust you had in me to serve your interest. Commissioners, you've become friends, and that may have imposed on you in a way that you don't want, but it's meant a great deal to me. I appreciated your support. Chairperson Scarlett, you're amazing, phenomenal. I'm so excited about where this commission is going under your leadership. Your support's been invaluable to me. But the 126 people at THEC also have been so inspiring, especially the Bureau leadership that I've been servant to. Dedicated people to the THEC Commission who think every day we can make this happen. And I believe we can as well. So thank you for the gift that you've given me. With that, Madam Chair, I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for all that you've done for THEC and for your outstanding career over the past 55 years. You've done amazing things for higher education, not only in Tennessee, but in other areas as well. And thank you for your reflection here and talking about recession-proofing Tennessee's economy. A lot of what has been said today are in my opening remarks, so excuse the repetition, but we didn't organize this. But I do believe I think that Tennessee is it's a critical moment in our history. It's an inflection point, if you will, a period that demands our attention, our introspection, and our action. The post-pandemic recovery, the rising costs of attending college, although it's not as bad in Tennessee as some other states, economic anxiety, a hot job market where you can actually go work at Chick-fil-A for $40,000 a year. It's opened a unique window of opportunity for us to reassess the purpose and role higher education. We can see from what Bob has shared, Dr. Smith has shared earlier, that the post-secondary credentials can recession-proof Tennessee. Now is our time to reset and refresh our collective expectations. We need to clarify the purpose that higher education has in our world, in this post-pandemic world. So although we might talk about this historically, the kids that are going into college this month, they spent most of their high school experiencing the pandemic. I can guarantee you everyone in this room did not spend the most of our lives focused on the pandemic. But that's been really a big element for them. Our education system has long been hailed as as a beacon for the American dream, offering access, academic excellence, and economic mobility. However, public confidence is at an all-time low, and we cannot afford to ignore this reality. Tennessee's higher education institutions must adapt to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's students. We must provide a clear value proposition that helps students reach their goals and support our local economy. In the past, Tennessee, I think, has been a great trailblazer in higher education innovation with initiatives like Complete College Act, Drive to 55, Tennessee Promise, and Tennessee Reconnect. But it's been a while since we've seen those sorts of efforts move forward. Those programs have encouraged more students to pursue post-secondary education, and that focus really needs to continue. However, it's now time to turn our attention to the institutions, to the supply side. As we continue to encourage young people to pursue higher education, to better their livelihoods, we must question whether we are content with sending them to institutions with poor completion rates. Accountability really matters. I believe we need to be data-driven decision makers and focus on outcomes. I'm a bit of a data geek for you guys that know me. That's where my heart goes first. But it also goes with the stories that we hear from students. I question whether we are satisfied with a 5% completion rate for certain subsets of our population. Do we know what happens to the students who graduate? Where do they go? What are they doing? How about those who drop out? These are all important questions to ask. They're hard. They're also hard to answer. But let's discuss reimagining the future of higher education, if you will. We need to align, and this is what you've heard this morning, aligning higher education with the future of work. Ensuring that students are engaging in meaningful experiences that lead to great jobs in growing career fields. We must build stronger partnerships with specific local regional employers to co-construct pathways to guaranteed jobs. This goes beyond mere sponsorships. It's a true employer partnership in the process. We must keep students at the center of the conversation, involve local employers, finding solutions, and get laser focused on the future of work and economic opportunities. We will think critically, and we will base our decisions on the data we have. I believe THEC is positioned to set a few focus tables for this conversation. The first, being the convening leader among institutions and advocates to set Tennessee's strategic vision for higher education. I've requested this process to start now. And I want it to include national and local experts, public and private institution leaders, and other key stakeholders across the state. We cannot wait for a permanent executive director to be in place. The clock is ticking. The clock's been ticking for a while. Second, let's shift our conversation from just degrees to viable pathways. Again, you've heard a lot of this commentary this morning. Think dual enrollment, stackable credentials, transfer pathways, portable apprenticeships. Let's bring the Department of Labor in. Let's understand what they're doing when it comes to apprenticeships, and how can we better partner and serve each other. Third, I believe we need to balance the supply and demand. We've made strides in student enrollment, although 54% is not enough in my book. I'm just throwing that out there. But now is the time to focus on the institutions. Where can we adopt best practices? Where can we innovate? And how can Tennessee support the next generation of higher education? Fourth, we need accountability through measuring the right things. It goes without saying, transparency matters, and what gets measured gets done. We are all here to help students be successful in life. We wouldn't be in this room if that was not part of our passion and our higher vision. But to do so, we've got to break down our silos and connect K-12, higher education, and workforce to make sure we're doing what's right for the students and for our economy. I propose we start each commission meeting with updated performance metrics from schools, using current information to stage commission discussion. Lastly, let's shine a spotlight on our community colleges. We heard from Dr. Deaton earlier. I see thriving communities that need excellent community colleges, partnered with student-focused nonprofits and local businesses in partnership. Community colleges hold immense potential for transformative change. And we should collectively focus on addressing those challenges and improving the community college sector. We heard from Russ Eaton earlier about significantly increasing credentials and reimagining community colleges. I would say there's probably like a decade behind, no offense, but all of our community colleges should have some sort of transformative overhaul now. It's that important for our community, for our state. I'll close by saying I really believe that we can revolutionize job skills development in Tennessee by putting the student experience at the heart of our efforts, which we collectively have continually talked about. Collaborating with local employers and nonprofits and making data-driven decisions, we will build a future, a strong future for our state. This is our moment in time to shine and to be an example for the rest of the nation. Higher education can be a powerful force for economic growth and community prosperity. And I hope to see all of us partnering together to make a difference and build a workforce that meets the demands of today's changing world. I thank everyone for being here again, and we will now get to the regular agenda. With that, I'd like to go ahead. We are starting with an election of officers. The first item on our agenda is the election of the THEC officers for the next year. Pursuant of Article 5 of our rules and procedures, we are to elect officers annually at our regular summer meeting to serve one-year terms. The offices consist of chair, 2 vice chairs, 1 east, 1 west, and secretary. The chair and vice chairs must reside in different grand divisions, as I just mentioned. The current commission officers are myself, I'm Middle Grand Division, I'm chair. Vernon Stafford, West Grand Division, vice chair. Where are you? Here you go. Dakasha Winton, East Grand Division, vice chair. And A.C. Wharton, who is on the phone, I believe still, who has been acting as our secretary. At this time, I'd actually like to pass the gavel to Treasurer Lillard, who will conduct the portion of the meeting. Treasurer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair outlined the requirements and the governing documents for the election of officers, and I would propose that, consistent with some prior precedents we've had, that we consider the officer elections as a slate with a single vote to be done at the end of the nominations. So with that, I'll open the floor for nominations for the office of chair. Don't all seek recognition at one time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Tara Scarlett as chair.
Okay, we've got a nomination for Tara Scarlett. Does that require a second under Robert's rules? I'm trying to think of who it does. Okay, all right, we need a second on that then. All right, we have a second by Whitney Allman. All right, any other nominations for the office of chair? Mayor, did you have something?
No.
Okay. Any other nominations for the office of chair? All right, seeing none, the chair without objection would declare nominations closed for chair. The next item would be the vice chair for West Grand Division. Floor is open for nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Vernon Stafford.
Okay, Commissioner Cope nominates Vernon Stafford, and there's been a second by Secretary Hargett. Are there any other nominations for West Grand Division Vice President? All right, seeing none without objection, the chair would propose that nominations cease on that office. And we'll go now to the vice chair for the East Grand Division. Floor is now open for that nomination.
I'll move to nominate Nakasha Winton.
All right, we have a motion for Nakasha Winton, nomination for her. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second, all right. Any other nominations for the vice chair for Eastern Grand Division? All right, seeing none, chair proposed without objection by the commission that those be closed. Next item is the nominations for the office of secretary.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Whitney Allman for the office of secretary.
All right, we have a nomination for Whitney Allman, second by Secretary Hargett.
Any further nominations for the office of secretary? All right, seeing none, without objection by the commission, I'll propose that the nominations cease for the office of secretary. With that, we have a full slate of nominees for each of the offices here, and I'll ask that the secretary call the roll on the motion to elect those officials.
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Cope?
Aye.
Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Moser? Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton?
Aye.
Commissioner Witten? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Aye.
Okay.
Chairwoman, you have 10, Chairman, you have 10 ayes.
All right, motion is carried and those officials are elected. That I'll conclude my brief chairmanship and pass it back to Chairman Scarlett.
Thank you, Treasurer Lillard. Our next item on our agenda is the transmission of the 23-24 proposed operating budget. Mr. Russell Vandermeer is going to, Senior Director of Fiscal Policy, will provide an overview of the proposed operating budgets and then answer any questions. You're recognized.
Great. Good morning, Madam Chair, Director Smith, members of the Commission. Glad to be here with you today. Russell Van Zomeren, Senior Director of Fiscal Policy. I'll keep my remarks relatively brief and save some time for questions. As a reminder, THEC is tasked in the appropriations bill each year to collect the operating budgets from the institutional boards and transmit them to Finance and Administration with comment. You can see language to that effect on the screen now. Here's what that looks like in practice. So prior to your reception of the data, each of our governing boards, the 6 LGIs and the 2 system boards, have already reviewed and approved these operating budgets. This body's task is then to transmit all of those data on to Finance and Administration, again with comment. Typically that comment looks similar to the opening sheet you see on this agenda item. If you all have additional commentary today, we'll include that in this letter when we transmit it on to Finance and Administration. A quick note on what we collect. So unrestricted E&G revenues and expenditures, we'll spend a bit more time on those here in a second, so I don't want to go too far into it. We also do a fees analysis. This fees analysis is looking at whether our institutions are in compliance with the binding ranges this body set in May. I'm pleased to announce that all of our institutions are. On average, our institutions are up about 2.8% for the 2023-2024 tuition, and that ranges really from 2.7 to 3.0, largely. You can find institution-level data in Table 5 of your materials. We also collect data on auxiliary revenue, athletics by source, and restricted revenue and expenditures. I'm happy to talk more about each of those should you all have interest. As a reminder, for the 23-24 appropriations for our formula units, there's about $121 million increase from the prior year, or about an 8.5% increase. About $112 million of that is focused on operating expenditures, so things like outcome performance, salary increases, increases for inflationary considerations. Looking at our specialized units, so places like our medical units or our Institute for Public Service, we're up about $41 million, so 7.4% in recurring funding. Of that, about $37 million is for those operating increases. All right, so we have some charts here. In the opening letter for this agenda item, we provide some trend data for how things have changed in terms of both revenues and expenditures, looking specifically at those E&G unrestricted revenues and expenditures. And I'd like to, real quick with you all, unpack those data a bit further. You see a good number of dots here actually on the screen. It's more now that they're further away. The light blue dot is 2023-24, so this year's budget. The dark blue dot is 2018-19, so the budget from 5 years ago. The gray dot is 2013-14, so 10 years ago. The handiest way to use these charts is actually just to look for the light blue dot and see where it's positioned relative to the other two, so you can get a sense of how the budget has moved from, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Looking at our community colleges, we can see that state appropriation makes up a much larger share of their revenue today than it did 5 or 10 years ago. On the other side of that, Tuition revenues make up a much smaller share than they did 5 or 10 years ago. And this is happening for a few reasons, really. The state has invested heavily in higher education over the last decade, keeping in mind that 2013-14 was in some ways a low watermark for higher education funding in our state. So some of this is going to be due to that. But even so, there's about $172 million new recurring revenue in the last decade for our community colleges. That's a big part of why we've seen this shift. Another point, this commission has authority over binding tuition, and in many years this body has set the binding tuition range below what we might consider a market rate. And that then plays out in this, and well, our institutions, especially our community colleges, are perhaps facing a de facto decreased dependence on tuition revenue. And the last point, and I think this might be actually the most succinct point and important one for this, we heard from Dr. Deaton, we heard from Stephen Gentile, each of them talking about the decreased enrollment, particularly at our community colleges over the last few years. That's been a rapid change, right? It's happened pretty quickly, 2 to 3 years. And that's played out in the tuition revenue. If you go back to 2019-20, the community colleges are reporting something like $312 million in tuition revenue. Today, the data you have in front of you is something like $255 million in tuition revenue. So it's a nominal loss of about $57 million, but considering the hyperinflationary environment we've operated in for the last 4 years, we've had about a decades of inflation in a very short amount of time. The real value, the real dollar value is even larger. So it's created this rapid shift in dependency from tuition onto state appropriations. Looking at our universities, we see a very similar story, a larger dependence maybe on state appropriations relative to tuition, which we see here. And the same sorts of things are happening. A large investment in higher education over the last 10 years. What do we have? Something like $515 million new recurring in the last decade for our universities. That's a large chunk of change, and that's helped create a new balance where state appropriations are taking up more of the overall revenues for our institutions. Moving on to expenditures. So for our expenditures, we've split them into 2 slides. So we're just looking at community colleges here. And we can see there's been a slight decline in expenditures on instruction at our community colleges relative to both 5 and 10 years ago. And that's made up for with increases on operation and maintenance as well as student services. This is somewhat unsurprising. If there are fewer students, maybe we are spending less on instruction, again, than we would have 5 or 10 years ago. Some of that is going to operations and maintenance, the lights have to stay on, and also student services, trying to serve those students better who are here. For our universities, we see a similar story on a larger scale. So instruction is down again, both from 5 and 10 years ago. Those expenditures have moved on to things like research, academic support, and it's hard to see here, and I forgot my little red box, but also scholarships and fellowships. There is a blue dot hidden under that 10% dark blue dot, a light blue dot. And so scholarships and fellowships is taking up a lot of that expenditure revenue, or expenditures as well. Okay, I covered a good bit of data in a short amount of time. With that, I'm happy to pause and take questions.
So I originally, this was on our consent calendar, and I had requested that it come on for broader conversation, primarily because I was interested in the first paragraph of the summary page we received about the revenue generated from tuition and fees expected to account 46% of overall revenue, while state appropriations for 44%. So having this broken out to see the amount of change that has fluctuation that's happened over the past 10 years is pretty extensive in the summary document, so I'd ask for this to be provided. And in listening to Dr. Deaton talk earlier about the reimagined community colleges and thinking differently about it, and looking at these numbers, I'm just struck with the amount of drain on the state funds right now for community colleges, where it also has such opportunity for the local communities of the students that go there. There's a checks and balances that, without being able to understand fully the direction the community colleges are going in, I look at these numbers and I question it as a taxpayer to say, does this really make sense or not? But I also recognize there's also a huge opportunity with these community colleges. I'm concerned about the changes that we're seeing over the past 10 years, knowing the enrollment, knowing the outcomes. However, I'm very hopeful to hear that there's focus from TBR, although I would say probably not as widespread as I would hope. But I think there's that beginning of the focus that I think would open up for larger conversations. And I'd love at some point maybe if we can get a download on what that is, and so help rationalize, understand, and what more we can do to help support TBR in these efforts. I don't know if anyone has any other questions or comments in regards to this.
One question going back to the community colleges slide, if you would, in the expenditures. And just help me understand, I look at the scholarships and fellowships of 2%. I guess I would have expected that to be larger. I know the state obviously contributes a lot. Is there not much contribution from the community colleges themselves to scholarships and universities, or scholarships and fellowships?
That tends to be the case. Our statewide scholarship programs are relatively robust, such that our two-year students face, I think, the lowest student board share costs in the nation. They are also, I think, in the top 5 for lowest debt in the nation. The community colleges do not need to use their revenue necessarily to provide scholarships. They instead maybe focus on that institutional and academic support.
Thank you.
I have another question. This student services and academic support, what is the difference between those two?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I have definitions buried in here. Student services, apologies. Okay. No, I'm off. Okay, student services are welfare of students, so student activities, intramurals, student aid, student health. Academic support is more like what you might imagine with guidance counselors or libraries, academic computing support, things like this.
Where do the coaches fit in? You mentioned the coaching project. Okay. Thank you. Please.
Let me ask one thing here. I was just looking at the summary memo and read this pretty thoroughly. It says toward the end there in the second to the last paragraph of the first page here, institutions will continue to devote most of their expenditures to instructional activities, and institutions plan to devote 60.1% of overall expenditures in FY 23-24 to the teaching functions on campus, i.e. instruction, research, public service, and academic support, as compared to 62% 5 years ago and 63.1% 10 years ago. And I realize it's hard to generalize in higher education because there's so many different models used and everything, but how does that change in the ratio going from 60.1% to instructional, from a high of 63.1% 10 years ago? Is that a trend that we're seeing across higher education, or is that unique to Tennessee? What are your observations on that?
It's a great question. I think it's a trend we're seeing everywhere, especially maybe at our university sector. Institutions are much more than they were 10 or 20 years ago. We hear from you all, from some of the old folks at THEC, when we went to college, it was just, cinder block buildings, right? It's different now, certainly, and so it's not just about maybe some of those teaching functions. There's a lot of other things happening on campus, and we see that happening in the operating budgets as well.
Okay. Is there any way to develop some yardstick that you would measure that across the country or across a relevant comparable peers group for institutions?
We would be happy to look into it, yes.
I think that'd be a worthy thing to look at. Okay. Thank you.
The only comment I would have is if you're considered old, I'm now a relic.
Apologies. Thank you all.
Wait, Russell, one more thing before you leave. Is there any kind of a digest of all the nonprofits that support the different colleges and institutions, and how much funding goes into those nonprofits? I think of like Tennessee Achieves, for example, and
Sure.
they've got a coaching model, or there's other ones I think too I think there's Persist Nashville that serves them. So I think it'd be interesting to see what is the state putting in,
Yeah.
what are philanthropic dollars putting in, are those nonprofits also getting funded from the government?
Yeah.
What does that total ecosystem look like?
That's a great note. So something we're trying to better capture is this total ecosystem. We've talked a little bit in our presentation last July about tuition and fees and how some of those tuition fees, actually often a good portion, can be covered from the state, from scholarships as well. We're trying to wrap our heads about where is all of the money going. We've done a really good job of tracking maybe our institutional specific funding through things like the operating budgets. We're trying to get a better sense of those, and so nonprofits is a great thing for us to add into that report and look at how the state is investing in nonprofits that are partnering with our institutions.
Maybe asking the question a little bit differently is, what does it really take to help students graduate in today's day and age?
Yeah.
Whether that's 2, 4, technical, whatever. So, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so with no other questions or objections, I'll entertain a motion and a second on agenda item 2, the transmission of the 23-24 proposed operating budgets.
Second.
Very well. Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Commissioner Winton, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That motion has passed. New academic programs. Next, we have 3 new academic programs for the commission to consider today from UT Chattanooga, UT Knoxville, and a joint program from UT Health Science Center and UT Southern. Dr. Julie Roberts, who is our Chief Academic Officer at THEC, will provide a brief overview of the 3 programs, and then we'll hear directly from the campus representatives. Dr. Roberts.
Thank you so much. As Chairwoman Scarlett mentioned, we have 3 programs. We're all UT today. So we're first going to hear from Dr. Jerry Hale, who's Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, regarding their proposed Management Masters of Science program. Next, you'll hear from Dr. John Zomchik, Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, regarding their proposed Master of Science in Business Cybersecurity. And then lastly, you'll hear from Dr. Cindy Russell, Vice Chancellor for Academic Faculty and Student Affairs at UT Health Science Center, regarding a really neat joint program with UT Health Science Center and UT Southern for a new nursing program. So with that, I'm going to invite Dr. Jerry Hale to come up.
Chair Scarlett, whoops, didn't mean to holler at everybody. Dr. Smith and members of the commission, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning and advocate on behalf of what we think is a very exciting academic program. We are excited about the academic program for a few reasons. First of all, we think that we can demonstrate that it meets a significant workforce demand, not just for the East Tennessee Grand Division, but for the 4-state region that the University of Tennessee Chattanooga also serves, and for the state as a whole. Secondly, we believe that we can demonstrate both from our current students and from alumni that there's a significant student demand for the program for which we are advocating. And the third thing that really excites us about it is that we think that it's a very unique program in a number of ways. And as I make comparisons with some of the other programs that currently exist in the state, I want to be very clear that I'm not implying that there is anything deficient or wrong about those programs. I'm only trying to suggest that what we believe is that we've carved out a unique niche that's going to meet the demand of students and the demand for the workforce as we go. So let's see if I can move us forward. Importantly, the program that we've proposed, which is a 30-hour Master of Management program, is designed to target students with bachelor's degrees earned in any field. And so what we're looking for, and I've seen this both anecdotally and in systematic studies and data that have been done, where we've had alumni come back to our campus, for example, and they'll say things to us like, I started my career doing actuarial science. I don't do that anymore. Now I manage actuarial scientists, and I never had any training in managing people. And I've heard the same thing from chemists, I've heard the same thing from engineers and people in a wide variety of fields. Well, so what we're trying to do with this degree program then is to target recent college graduates with 2 to 5 years of experience, although it might also target people who've been out a bit longer, and again, graduates from any degree program. The unique characteristics of the program and outcomes are that it's designed to enhance their leadership and management skills, both for their current occupations so they can advance in the company where they currently are, or to help with future occupations and future careers. And we do it through, in part, by creating a personal career strategy for them as they work through the curriculum. And one of the unique aspects of the program is that it comes with career coaching along the way as well. The program attributes are that it is fully online. There is a weekend immersion that for the first cohort of students will happen once because there won't be any graduates of the program there. But for subsequent cohorts of students, it will happen twice. It will happen at the beginning of the program for them where they will get together and they will meet with members of the business community and other folks. It is essentially a networking experience for them, and it will also then include with the subsequent cohorts the graduates of the program as well. It requires, again, 30 credit hours. It is completely online and completely asynchronous with the exception of those weekend immersion experiences. And it is designed so that students should be able to complete it if they are full-time students in a single calendar year. The curriculum is also designed, though, and will be offered so that students who cannot, because of work schedules, family obligations, or the ways that life interferes generally, that if they cannot participate in the program as a full-time student, they can participate in it as a part-time student and still stay on track for a reasonably timely graduation. Now, most of the programs that are Master of Science and management programs that exist in the state of Tennessee are offered by private universities, and we believe that one of the advantages that we will have in attracting students over those universities is that there will be a significant tuition differential between the cost of attending UTC and the cost of attending the private institutions. There are also some public institutions, and we believe that there are some qualitative differences between the program that we're proposing and what's happening at those institutions currently. APSU, for example, has an MS in management. It is a more general degree, something that for most programs would resemble something closer or more akin to an MBA program. It is also a 30 credit hour program, and it is offered completely online. We think the difference between what we're proposing and what is happening at Austin Peay is the difference in the curriculum, which I'll explain to you in just a second. Middle Tennessee State also has an MS in management, and it focuses on organizational leadership. It is a few credit hours longer than the one that we propose, and it also necessarily requires courses to be taken in a dual modality, and that doesn't mean that students have a choice between being online or being face-to-face. It means that the courses are offered in both modalities as they complete the program. And then finally, there is a program at THEC Nazarene University, and it is 33 credit hours. It is completely online in organizational leadership. And again, we believe that the advantage there is primarily one, that is a tuition-based advantage for the program that we're proposing. There are also MS in management degrees at two of the sister campuses in the University of Tennessee system. The difference between what we're proposing here and what's offered there is that the focus of those two programs is largely in the human resource domain and with human resource procedures, human resource regulations and things like that, and that will decidedly not be the focus for what we're proposing today. The program attributes, you can see how it aligns both with the state master plan and with the UTC strategic plan. And we think that's important. We wouldn't be proposing a program to you if we didn't believe that there was significant alignment with both the state master plan and with our university's strategic plan. Significantly, we believe that we can demonstrate that there will be a significant managerial job growth and between 2022 and 2027, and actually the trend continues well beyond that. We found nearly 70,000 unique job postings in Tennessee for managerial positions in 2022. And what we also found during that period of time is, or with the student surveys that we did, is that there was a good deal of significant interest from students in pursuing this degree program. You'll see on the right of the slide that you have there and in the materials that we presented in the new academic program proposal, you'll see one of the several letters that we presented from businesses in and around Chattanooga encouraging us to propose this program and put it forward. And so we do believe that we have the support of our community partners as well. I made reference earlier to the nature of the academic program design. And what happens in a lot of the programs that are being offered in particular areas is that the technical skill sets that are required for those degree programs are what's being offered. And what we're doing primarily instead is to focus the curriculum around 5 different skill areas, and you can see those skill areas listed on the slide in front of you. The coursework includes foundational business skills and concepts. It includes instruction on leadership dynamics, decision-making, project management, and ethical decision-making concepts. And importantly, it allows students to engage in an analysis of their personal leadership strengths and weaknesses so they can build on their weaknesses and continue to build on their strengths. And then it also allows them to construct very pragmatic and individualized strategies to improve their leadership and management skills and to create what for them is a very idiosyncratic and very person-centered career trajectory and career strategy for them. You see at the bottom of that slide additional reference made to the fall immersion event and to the career-focused coaching that is built both into the curriculum and the student support processes that we have as well. And I believe that the last slide is the enrollment projections and financials. We believe that the enrollment projections that we have there are probably on the conservative side, that the enrollments will be more robust than what we have projected there. You'll notice that the graduates begin with a fairly meager quantity, and I want to make sure that you understand why that's happening. The graduates in year 1, we're expecting that the program will include a number of part-time students and not just full-time students. And that's the reason that we think that that's going to happen. We also plan, if approved, on starting the program in January of 2024. And so that first year cohort then will be a bit attenuated as well. But we fully intend on investing the revenues that come into the program or to the university from the program to be reinvested in the program so that we can create one that is financially sustaining over time. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
This emergence event, does that restrict enrollment to the local area even though it's fully online, or will students from all over the state of Tennessee be able to participate in this program?
The students could come from anywhere, including students from out of state. And we intend on marketing the program fairly aggressively if approved.
And then how is this more approachable than a traditional MBA program?
It's an interesting thing. There's a trend happening now in higher education across the country, so that MBAs, which at one point in time were the rage and everybody wanted to have one, what's happening now is that students are seeking out more specialized degrees, and so you see the seeking of MBAs falling off, the seeking of specialized graduate degrees increasing. And I think probably some of the reason is that most of the MBA programs tend to be generalist programs, so that students are learning a little bit about a lot of different areas in business, and they're not concentrating on any specific area. And what's starting to happen now is that students are seeking more specialized degrees.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Takasha.
So I just had a general question because this particular program focuses a lot on leadership development, and you mentioned that most of the programs that we implement and we approve are more technically related, but and this one is more like developing those social skills and all that good stuff. I guess what's kind of disconcerting for me is that I would have assumed that all of the programs that we have approved have some level of managerial, teaching people how to operate in the workforce. Otherwise, we have people ill prepared when they're coming out of the workforce. So I'm just interested to know your thoughts on, just programs in general, and why they are lacking in that, teaching people how to join the workforce.
Well, there are a few different potential answers to that. And again, one of the targets for this degree program might not be people who had undergraduate degrees in management, for example. So it is one that's designed to appeal to people from a lot of different disciplines. Some of those different disciplines and degree programs, I think, do a better job than others at teaching the human skills. And some of them focus just completely on the development of the technical skills that are advanced. If you think, for example, about, gosh, I hate to do this because I love these programs at my own university, but if you think about training accountants, it's very important for an accountant to have the technical skills to do their job. It is much less important in the early stages of their career, at least, to have what I would call the human skills. And so I think part of the reason is because this degree will be appealing to people who have moved into or getting ready to or wanting to move into managerial positions, and the degrees that they pursued before didn't necessarily build those sorts of skills for them.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
That explains a lot of the accountants that I know.
Well, I won't say that it's about accountants. You can fill in whatever discipline that you want. But there is an old joke that the introverted ones stand around staring at their shoes, and the extroverted ones stand around staring at your shoes. So,
as one who got his degree in accounting,
uh-oh.
I do agree with what you've presented in the importance of soft skills, and that's something that we look for a lot in students today that is missing. You did a great job presenting the fact that your program, or you believe your program, will be distinctive, and I believe you even say distinctive from other management offerings in that they will particularly focus on leadership skills. Mm-hmm. And this is not a criticism, just a little bit of education for me. How did you come up with the naming of it as a management degree as opposed to a leadership degree? It seems like to me there's a clear distinction between the two, and for it to be so unique and distinctive, I would think that the leadership title would be more attractive.
Commissioner Stafford, if you see the smile on my face, it's because, first of all, that's an excellent question, but it's not exactly a soup question. If you look back through the management literature, and if you talk to professors of management and practitioners of management, there is a lengthy debate that goes back probably about 75 years that looks something like this. About half of the field believes that if you made Venn diagrams, and who doesn't love a good Venn diagram, of management and of leadership, that the two would map onto one another perfectly, and so they use the term interchangeably. And then another half of the field and another half of the practitioners would suggest that there are significant differences between the two. So that leadership, for example, they might suggest is a series of behaviors that are designed to align people behind a collective goal or a shared vision. And that management, on the other hand, includes many more things, such as the ability to organize necessary resources and activities in order to achieve whatever those shared goals might be. And so there's really no easy answer to your question. What we have conceived of here, though, is probably something that falls into the latter category. And if you were to Venn diagram those, because again, who doesn't love a good Venn diagram, what would happen is leadership would be subsumed in the circle of management, but that the management circle would be much bigger and include several other additional activities. And what we believe we've done with this particular degree program is include the leadership component in a major way. But if you go back through the curriculum that we've proposed, it includes courses in a number of different areas. Things like effective team building, for example, things like project management skills, which can be different than leadership skills and some things like that. So I'm sorry for a lengthy answer, but I hope that answers your question.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Very well then. Thank you very much, Dr. Hale. I appreciate it. Since there's no more questions or objections, I'll entertain a motion in a second on item A, the UT Chattanooga Management Master of Science. We do not have a quorum. We got to hang out and wait for our people to show back up. Thank you, Stephen.
Do we still have our virtual participants? Okay, we're good.
Oh, we do?
We will need to read after the vote a statement of necessity explaining the virtual to make it form. But yes, go ahead and take the vote. But we will need our virtuals.
All right, so we had a motion. Did we get a second? I missed that.
I'll make a second.
Second? Madam Secretary?
Are we back?
We have people online.
No.
Oh, yay.
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Cope?
Aye.
Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Moser? Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton?
Aye.
Commissioner Winton? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard? Comptroller Mumpower?
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 9 ayes.
Thank you. Wonderful. Dr. Zomchak? Wonderful.
Thank you, Chair Scarlett. Good morning, Executive Director Smith, members of the Commission. Always a pleasure to come before you and to present to you a proposal for a new degree program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. What I'm presenting to you this morning is a Master of Science in Business Cybersecurity to be offered by our Haslam College of Business. The impetus behind this program is an explosive growth in the need for cybersecurity jobs across the country. According to one of the sources we consulted, there are about 750,000 vacancies in 2022, and the U.S. Bureau of Labor expects a 30% job growth in cybersecurity openings by 2030. This is a particular program which seeks to merge management skills with some level of IT knowledge. I'll read to you a quotation from Gartner Security and Risk Management that I think summarizes it. A strategy of bringing business into cybersecurity decisions produces better resilience and more willing collaboration between business users and the Office of the Chief Information Security Officer. I've just given you the overview of the program, that blending or merging of business acumen and knowledge of internet technology. The unique features of this particular program are no prior technical degree is required. It will be business focused with technical content, courses offered both by our College of Business and our Tickle College of Engineering. It will also distinguish itself from other current business cybersecurity programs by offering a full program, not a concentration. It's a fully online program that's aimed at working professionals who might want to attend part-time, as well as traditional students who might want to attend full-time, obviously for Tennessee and beyond, since it's fully online. 10 courses, 30 credit hours, $1,000 per credit. We believe that this will be an innovative program. Our Haslam College of Business has 2 online master's programs. This will be a third. They have developing expertise in the area for accessible and inclusive design. It's going to focus, as Haslam always does, on real-life challenges in the business arena, especially paying attention to emergent and evolving issues. And we think that this program will produce graduates with the skills necessary and desired by businesses here in the state and across the country. Here you see our enrollment and financial projections for the program. We expect, you may be asking about the expenditures. I should hasten to add that this program is being launched with help from Noodle Partners, who is an online program management company that we've been using at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville for the last several years. And Noodle has also collaborated with Haslam on those other 2 programs I mentioned. So part of the expenditures that you see on the top line include both course development, instructional design, but also a per course fee that we paid to Noodle Partners over the course of the contract with them, which is 5 hours. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about the program. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Just one moment, please. I don't know who's running IT.
Can we get them not to forward to the next thing before we're actually ready to go to the next thing?
My fault. I did that. Sorry, Secretary Hargett. I'm guilty.
Well, I walked back in the room a moment ago, and I thought we were voting on your item because it had already been forwarded to the next item, and we were not on that item.
note to the team that we just stay on the existing item until vote has been completed. Wonderful. Mayor Wharton, I believe I heard your.
Thank you. My question is based on absolutely zero knowledge in this field, but this is focusing on cybersecurity, a field in which certainly we need this offering. My basic, simple question is there any trajectory for individuals enrolling in this program with respect to the severe need for security in the AI field? I want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge and that there may be some trajectory where folks who enroll in this program may be better equipped to move into that frontier, from which I read, just as a layperson, there's going to be a great need for security.
Mr. Commissioner, that is a fantastic question. We have a number of initiatives at UT Knoxville that are aimed at AI, including a brand new college, which was approved here, a College of Emergent and Collaborative Studies, that will offer AI courses. At the moment, in the courses that are listed for this program, there is not specifically a course that is dedicated to AI, but I can assure you that the Housing College of Business will continue to update the curriculum. We're all, I think, playing catch up. That is to say, catch up, not ketchup, which is a condiment. With respect to AI, because it has, literally, I think, exploded onto the higher education scene, especially since October with the release of ChatGPT. And we're working as quickly as we can to equip all of our students, not just those who go through programs like this one, with literacy and competence in artificial intelligence. It will be absolutely essential for working in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Jacob.
What is the ratio between what courses will take place in the College of Business versus the engineering?
I don't have it before me, but I believe it's 6 to 4. 6 in business, 4 in engineering.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I appreciate the condiment correction. With that, I'll entertain a motion and a second on item B, which is the UT Knoxville Business Cybersecurity Master of Science.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Commissioner Winton, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Thank you so much. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Zomchak. Dr. Russell, you are recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Scarlett, Commissioners, Director Smith, THEC staff, and guests. On behalf of the team working on this project as the Chief Academic Officer of the UT Health Science Center, I'm privileged to present this joint Bachelor of Science in Nursing program that's tangible evidence of the University of Tennessee System's B1UT values. This joint program is the outgrowth of conversations that started shortly after our June 2021 UT Board of Trustees meeting, where Martin Methodist College was formally welcomed to UT as UT Southern. You might ask why we went to the extensive effort of combining and joining two already independently accredited, Board of Nursing approved, and successful traditional Bachelor of Science in Nursing programs. Establishing this joint program, though, results in several advantages to our students, both of our institutions, and our state. This academic program is designed so that students complete the pre-nursing curriculum of 60 credits the first 2 years as UT Southern students, and then they complete the nursing curriculum of 60 credits the last 2 years as joint program students. Tuition and fees are set at the UT Southern rate. Students at UT Southern will remain on the Pulaski campus. They'll have a very personalized experience because they remain on that Pulaski campus. In addition, though, they will have access to a wider range of faculty expertise, and they'll also be able to take advantage of unique site-specific resources, such as UT Southern's rural health focus, as well as the Health Science Center's internationally known and nationally accredited simulation center and extensive library holdings. Faculty also at both institutions will have a broader network of colleagues, and our experience shows that purposefully facilitating faculty networking supports their teaching, scholarship, and research, as well as overall professional development. As identified by our program reviewer, our UT Southern and UT Health Science Center faculty have been working together for more than a year to ensure that our relationship is more of a partnership and a blending and a learning from each other. In terms of the benefits to our state, nursing students are like other students in that they typically work and practice where they do their educational program. This grow your own practice is supported by the literature, and we see it also being true for dental, medical, and teacher education. We believe by capitalizing on each institution's strengths, we can better serve the South Middle Tennessee region to provide an increased number of registered nurses who will improve the healthcare system. By increasing the number of post-secondary degrees through expanding a high-quality baccalaureate program in a high-demand discipline in an underserved and rural area of the state, this program aligns perfectly with the State Master Plan for Higher Education. The program also perfectly supports the University of Tennessee's grand challenge of strengthening rural communities. In addition, the program is consistent with the institutional mission statements of the Health Science Center and UT Southern to prepare students for success and transform lives through collaborative and inclusive education. The program also aligns with the mission statements of the UTHSC College of Nursing and the UT Southern Jeanette M. Travis School of Nursing and Health Sciences to prepare students to be leaders by incorporating rigorous and innovative academic approaches. Several factors highlight the importance of this joint program that is projected to increase the number of highly qualified graduates who are prepared to obtain licensure and then practice in their local communities. The Tennessee Hospital Association's October 2022 Health Workforce Projections Report showed a clear shortage of registered nurses statewide that is particularly severe in the South Middle Tennessee region. UT Southern has the only Bachelor of Science in Nursing program in the 12-county South Middle Tennessee region. And there are numerous open positions for registered nurses in the area that mirrors what we also see across our state. The starting salary is approximately $25 per hour in the area, which is about $50,000 annually, and with differential salary for evening, night shifts, that working salary can actually approach $60,000. Ensuring that two highly effective and independent baccalaureate programs successfully merge into one joint program that reflects the strengths and unique contributions of both requires significant effort and dedicated time of faculty and staff. And while we might think, well, it's two accredited programs offering the same degree, it should be easy. In actuality, one program plus one program does not equal one combined program. There's a lot of extra work to actually use the synergy and use the strengths of both programs to yield a new program that is actually more than the sum of its parts. The initial process of achieving approval to bring the program before you today took longer than we initially anticipated. However, it had a very positive effect of helping us realize the advantages of taking this 2023-2024 academic year as the planning year. And this planning year will ensure that we successfully integrate UT Southern faculty and staff to the Health Science Center, given that UT Southern employees supporting the program in Pulaski will become employees of the UT Health Science Center. Our focus will be on areas such as aligning the curriculum, unifying our concept of shared governance, developing additional policies, and signing revised contracts with clinical entities. We will also be addressing technology issues, since much of the program will be jointly delivered from Memphis to Pulaski, from Pulaski to Memphis. It's imperative that technology works well. And this will also give us an opportunity in sufficient time to work with students in the area to actually develop a good marketing and recruitment plan that will actually at some point potentially end us having more than 17, 15 students admitted per year. It's vital that we bring all relevant resources and a solid commitment to increase education, enrollment, graduation, and professional licensure success for nursing students to ensure we're serving our state. This innovative joint program does just that. Our program reviewer, in closing, noted, and I quote, "This program should be highlighted as a national model for supporting smaller programs with resources from larger programs, while recognizing and highlighting the unique perspectives and expertise each program brings to the partnership." Commissioners, I'd be pleased to answer and address any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you for that presentation. Note, and you covered this in your presentation in terms of the shortage of nurses statewide, but in particular in the rural areas. Is there a relationship that's already established or will be established with local hospitals, clinics, and so on to funnel students there? And then how do you prepare students for the nuances of working in more of a rural area versus a more populated, dense area?
Thank you for that question. So UT Southern already has existing clinical contracts with a wide variety of hospitals and clinical sites in that area. What we'll have to do is convert those to UT Health Science Center contracts and also seek additional ones. I would also see us potentially partnering, again, as UT Southern has done, and maybe taking it a step further as well, with some innovative models where healthcare institutions might need a cadre of students who are prepared, operating room nursing as an example. And then maybe there could be a cadre that we could focus on as well and have some extra experiences for that. That's been a model that has served us in Memphis as by our Dean of Nursing, Wendy Likes, who has helped advance that. And I think that could be a model as well.
Would you mind helping me understand, in this case here, it seems that obviously the budget is balanced, but with the prior academic programs, they were using, I'm going to say the net profit, if you will, but to reinvest into the program. Why do you not see the need here in this case?
So we're looking at those tuition revenues that come in and then the expenditures. We are also looking for the additional potential for having some additional grants and things that might help us expand the program. These are two fully functioning programs as they are. So unlike asking for new money for a brand new program that has to start from scratch, this really is a how can we work together and combine our resources and maximize the use of the resources we currently have.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion and a second for item C, the UT Health Science Center and UT Southern Joint Nursing Bachelor of Science.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Commissioner Winton, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Madam Secretary, Madam Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Excellent, thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Russell. The motion carries.
Thank you.
So our next item on today's agenda is we're going to talk about financial policies. The revisions of 3 financial policies. I believe Patty Miller is going to, Chief of Facilities Planning, will provide us an overview of the revisions for each policy. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
Good morning,
Chairwoman Scarlett, Director Smith, Commission members. The first policy modification is in F 4.0 in the capital projects section of financial policies. This past spring, legislation was passed that in part affected THEC policy related to disclosed projects. A disclosed project is any capital project funded by sources other than state outlay or maintenance funding. In other words, they are funded by gifts, grants, plant funds, or other sources outside of capital appropriations. The legislation now allows the institutions to disclose projects of $10 million and under in value directly to the State Building Commission without reporting those to THEC, except for projects of any value involving the use of bond funds. Projects of $10 million and under will no longer be disclosed through submittals to THEC. To be consistent with the legislation, THEC will receive and report consistent with the legislation project submittals from the institutions involving the use of bond funds of any value and all projects over $10 million in value as part of the annual capital budget process. THEC will disclose those projects to F&A and to the governor for consideration in the annual budget. The legislation and corresponding THEC policy change simplify the disclosure process and reduce the timeline for smaller projects. Be glad to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Comments? Have a motion to approve the policy update. Do we have a second? Excellent. Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Commissioner Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Knight.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser. Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Commissioner Winton. Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Motion carries. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. The second modification in F 4.1 is related to master plans. The designation for master plan updates is proposed to be removed from the policy. Master plan updates build on the core structure of the previous master plan, and updates are comprehensive in scope. Therefore, they function as a full master plan. The policy retains the definitions for full master plans and master plan amendments that make smaller adjustments to the plan, such as building sites, space studies, and revisions to property acquisition areas. In addition, language is added to acknowledge the importance of strategic plans, which should form the foundation for the development of the physical master plan. Also, references to infrastructure and building conditions are added as a part of the reviews to emphasize those critical elements of the plan. The amendment section also adds space needs study as a possible type of amendment. These are simple changes proposed to clarify the types of plans and review focus.
Any questions or comments? Second? Madam Secretary. Or any further discussion? I'm forgetting that part. Okay. Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Commissioner Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Knight.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser. Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Commissioner Winton. Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The third modification in F 4.2 is related to leases. The existing policy requires THEC to collect and transmit quarterly reports from all institutions on the listing of all leases and licenses. Following the passage of the Focus Act, the institutions began to report leases on a quarterly basis directly to the state architect's office. This policy modification removes the requirement for THEC to act as a pass-through on those reports to be consistent with how the reporting now occurs in practice and is supported by the state architect. We request your consideration and approval.
Any questions or comments? Look for a motion and a second.
Second.
Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman. Commissioner Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Knight.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser. Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Commissioner Winton? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you.
Next up is an off-campus location for Jackson State Community College at the Gibson County Center. Angelica Jones, Director of Academic Affairs, will provide information on off-campus location. Ms. Jones, you recognize.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. Per THEC's off-campus policy, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission is to review and approve or disapprove all programs for off-campus locations at public institutions, including community colleges and universities. This means the Commission must approve any off-campus location outside of the main campus that provides complete programs. With that, Jackson State Community College requests a center code for the Gibson County Center, which was originally established in 1994 in Trenton, Tennessee. This request is a result of a 2022 service area change that then resulted in Jackson State Community College acquiring some of Dyersburg State Community College's service area. Jackson State plans to maintain the existing programs that had been offered by Dyersburg State, including dual enrollment and courses that count towards AA and AS degrees. Jackson State Community College plans to add additional certificate offerings such as patient care technology and healthcare technician. Renovations are anticipated to be general and pertain mainly to the upkeep and transition of the current facility. Jackson State Community College intends to hire 2 additional staff members to assist with the projected increase in enrollment and the need for further student service support. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present today, and I, along with my colleagues from TBR and Jackson State, are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Cope?
Aye.
Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Moser? Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton?
Aye.
Commissioner Winton? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Congratulations, the motion carries. Thank you. Next agenda item is other business, and we've got a variety of topics to cover in other business. First and foremost is I'm sad to announce that Dr. Bob Smith has resigned. His last day will be September 15th. It has been an honor and a pleasure to have spent the past 9 months, working with Dr. Smith, not only just getting to know him as a person, as a leader of people, as an expert in this space, but also from an outside perspective, watching transformative rebuild of the internal team at THEC. It's been a really remarkable to see such amazing transformation over a very short period of time, and I account that to so much of his background, his approach, his leadership style, and very much sad to see you go. I did try to recruit him to stay. I'm just letting you guys know. But it's time for him to take the next step. So I just, once again, would love to have a round of applause for Dr. Smith for serving such Well, so September 15th will be his last day as interim, which I think actually might be a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know what you're doing. It's a Friday. Okay, confirm that. I've spent a good amount of time with the internal chiefs over the past 4 or 5 months, and I would like to move in pursuant with the TCA 497205A. The commission selects, yes, Dr. Stephen Gentile for the position of Interim Executive Director for Tennessee Higher Education Commission under the existing terms and conditions of the position. I welcome any seconds that might.
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion, Madam Chair.
Very well. Is there any further discussion about this? With that, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman? Commissioner Cope?
Aye.
Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Moser? Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton?
Aye.
Commissioner Winton? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Motion carries. Welcome to the role, Dr. Gentile. And that leads us to the search update. I'm not going to relive the past 9 months on the search process that we've been through, nor do I will spare you all the last 9 weeks of trying to get a search firm in here. As you all know, my background is in the private sector. It takes like a day to find a search firm. In government, it took us 9-10 weeks. Lots of opportunity there, but that's not why we're here. We did kick off with a search firm this week with a company called AGB. And so we had that kickoff on Monday. We have set an expectation with that firm that we would like to have the final selection by our next commission meeting, which is November 16th, if I'm not mistaken. We'd like to have that final candidate at that point. Full awareness that that might not mean that they're starting on the 17th, but it could mean they start in January. But regardless, we would like to have someone selected at that time. I am expecting a timeline back from the search firm, and as soon as that is received, certainly we'll be sending it out to the search committee, just so that we are all aware of next steps. Any questions about search firm or anything else?
Well, if I can, if a candidate is identified well before then, we could move before then.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The sooner the better. Although I say the sooner the better, and per our past discussions, we want to get the right person in here. For all the reasons that we've talked about earlier today. I also recognize, and I will state again, that we don't need to stop the work we need to be focused on in moving forward strategically in absence of having a permanent director. So I think that's really important for all of us to recognize. However, the sooner the better in my book. Yes, I agree with you. Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair, quick
Yes, sir.
question.
Yes, sir.
As part of the process, will the search committee be reaching out to commissioners for a touch base or input, or will they be relying strictly on the search committee or the chair? I know I would have some interest in offering the search firm some input. How will that work?
So the conversation that we had with them on Monday is I expect there'll be some level of correspondence and communication with certainly the search committee, and we can extend that to the entire commission if desired, to be able to feed into the final profile. We have all agreed to and approved the job description back in January, if I remember correctly, and they'll be using that just to begin to develop. Actually, I believe they already have a draft of the profile. However, I do think that additional input and feedback would be valuable from the entire commission. It's an important step as we're embarking on hiring the next commissioner or the next executive director.
Thank you. I'll just say I would appreciate the contact from the search firm, and whether it's all members or whether it's members that express an interest in that, I would certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
I would propose at this day and age, I think it would be valuable for us to go ahead and push it out to all members. If all members choose to engage, fantastic. If you choose not to engage, you just have to let them know. Does that work for everybody? I have two other elements, so three other parts of other business. One, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Winton. You had a request.
Yes, I had a request for the universities in regards to housing for students as we are getting ready to go into this next semester. I know a lot of, we've seen a lot of things in the news, so if we can get any updates at all in regards to whether or not we have adequate housing available. I don't know if everybody's here or not that can provide any insight, but it would just be helpful for us to know.
Thank you, Commissioner Winton. I'll just speak for the University of Tennessee and all of our campuses. We have adequate housing for all of our students coming in. Yep.
I believe that Ms. Miller might have already collected some of that information from the all higher education, and I don't know whether she has that information with her, or maybe or it's a report that can be sent out later. We'll just have that sent out later. Next up, I want all of you to know, this is a request I've made multiple times in regards to understanding all the advisory programs that exist across the state. Brett Gibson, who is my lead contact, is with THEC. There he is. And they have provided a map and also an initial assessment. So once that is all compiled, I'll share that with everyone. We learned earlier, listening to Dr. Deaton, I've talked with Tennessee Achieves. There's a lot of programs, certainly AIRS Foundation, there's a lot of programs that exist across the state. And it's like a mosaic of support at different levels, and it's not really an apples to apples comparison, and we're measuring things differently. And I've asked the team to be able to help me understand what does that look like holistically across the state. And let's look at an apples to apples comparison as well as a single measure for each of those entities so we can understand where we have gaps and where we have opportunities. So I have some of that so far, and once it's all compiled, it'll be shared with everyone. That brings us to the last point of other business that I have so far. It's been notified, and I'd like to recognize Comptroller Mempower in regards to a letter that was sent to the Commission on August 1st. Comptroller?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members who are there. I want to start by saying how much I very much appreciate the work of Dr. Bob Smith, both from the just spirit, Dr. Smith, with which you approach the work, and the stability you have brought to the operation since you've been here. And I echo others in saying that we'll miss you. Members, back on August 1st, I sent you a letter via email summarizing some thoughts I had, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it or even take questions about it today. It occurs to me, particularly at this time where we are searching for a new executive director, that it's important that we internally acknowledge that we are at a real turning point. I have served on THEC for 2.5 years now, and I feel like THEC has been off track the entire time I've been a member of the commission. I observed the commission closely under the work of my predecessor, Justin Wilson. Comptroller Emeritus Wilson agrees with me that there has been a drift in the last 2.5 years. In Tennessee, we have a very, I think, unique model that works very well. We have a model where the governor thoughtfully nominates people to serve on university boards, and then the legislature is charged with thoughtfully considering and confirming the people that serve on those boards. Now, I am a big believer in market-based solutions, and I believe that as we hire a new executive director, we must also look at our scope and scale and make sure that our functions are what they need to be. Now, as I outlined in my letter, I believe that we are inhibiting the process that is law. We're inhibiting the ability of these thoughtfully nominated board members and thoughtfully confirmed board members to be able to do the work the governor and the legislature have tasked them to do. For example, as I mentioned in my letter on the tuition range setting, I live up in Bristol, Tennessee. Bristol, Tennessee is closer to Canada than it is to Memphis. And ETSU is up here where I live. The tuition needs of East Tennessee State University and the University of Memphis are different. And the same for all the universities in between. I believe that we need to give those independent boards an ability to examine and set their own tuition rates, subject to confirmation by THEC, to make sure that they're setting rates that will allow them to continue to operate in the black. My worry is not about a university setting rates too high. I believe the market will take care of that, but I do have a concern about them artificially setting them too low such that they wouldn't remain in the black. A similar thing for academic program approval. It occurs to me in particular that THEC spends a lot of time examining academic program approval, but we don't have a corresponding mechanism to rescind programs that might be outdated. We might be able to make a recommendation for rescission, but not the ability to do it ourselves. So that being said, absent a mission shift, for example, if a college wanted or a university wanted to go into, say, creating a law school or a medical school or something like that, short of a mission shift, just for standard academic program approval, I have faith in the men and women who have been appointed by the legislature and the governor. And then in regard to capital projects, in life, I believe it is important to be regarded. And I think more than anything, THEC has slipped into a stage where we are not regarded. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Be either hot or cold, but not lukewarm." And over in the halls of the legislature and the Capitol, we are not even regarded. And it's nowhere more visible than it is in the capital project list that is promulgated every year. And then you can see has clearly, for the past 2 years in particular, just been disregarded. And I of course, I was a member of the legislature and have great faith in the legislature and this governor to look out and see the needs of the people of Tennessee and the students of Tennessee. And so that's why I suggest we might want to shift that function. So, more than anything, I wrote this letter to you to make sure or I wanted to share my thoughts with you, but I also wanted to say to you, as I tried to verbally say at our previous retreat, which unfortunately several were not able to attend, but I'm being completely honest and just as upfront as I can be when I say that THEC is not a strong player in the world of higher education in the halls of the Tennessee legislature. We have not had an executive director that has had a relationship with legislators or legislative leaders, that has had a relationship with the governor's office, and we have suffered for that. We are not at the table in the way THEC used to be. And if we're going to continue to exist, which we do such great work in regard to data collection and data analysis and reports, and such important and great work in regard to the financial aid component. But we either need to do a great job that is held in high regard for all our functions, or we need to jettison some of those functions. And again, I outline in my letter thoughts about that. I'm not going to say that all of my ideas are 100% perfect. What I want us to do is have robust discussions about it. And I believe we might even need to consider appointing a working group that would include some folks from THEC. I will offer staff from my office to help with that. We also need to have folks from the university community involved in that examines the scope and scale of our duties. The reason I wrote this letter too, and I wrote it right now, ideally I think I would have delivered it to you later in the year, but I wanted to lay this marker down as we search for a new executive director, both so commissioners would have these thoughts in mind, and so that anyone that wants to apply for this job would also know that there are some people who are looking for change. And I am certainly one of those people that is looking for change. I want THEC to be back at the table. I want THEC to be robust. I don't want THEC to be a micromanager of our strong institutions who have thoughtfully appointed boards. I want us to be what we want to be, what we can be, what we need to be. And, as I mentioned in my letter, I appreciate the commission today installing Stephen Gentile as the interim executive director. I will say that as we search for a new executive director, I am interested in somebody who is a Tennessean, or at a minimum has strong ties to Tennessee in their recent past. There is nothing more important in a new executive director than the ability to form and foster good working relationships with the men and women of the Tennessee General Assembly and the governor's office. So I thank you for allowing me a few minutes to talk about my letter. And I'll be happy to address any questions or go in whatever direction you want to go, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I'd like to open it up to questions and comments. Please.
May I get a copy of that letter?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
I'm sorry, who asked the question?
Our new student representative, Jacob Knight, has requested a copy of a letter which we'll have sent to him, so you're aware of this.
Certainly. And Jacob, by the way, let me say welcome to another Sullivan Countian on this board. You're from Bluff City, right?
That is correct.
Yes. 2 Sullivan Countians on the commission. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, please.
A.C. Wharton here. Mr. Comptroller, certainly welcome your invitation to the commission to engage in some introspection with respect to our role. So I sought recognition not to say I agree or disagree, but the discussion is certainly worth having, and I would say in the very near future, particularly as we're about to select a new director. I will say this, that having served for I don't know how many years, the concerns that you expressed are not new. I have been taken to the woodshed by any number of governors, any number of committee chairs, both in the House and Senate, with questions and concerns identical to those that you raise here. My closing observation will be this, that I think if we do our job properly, we will not necessarily always gain the favor, warmth, and affection of the legislative body, or quite frankly, the executive branch. One of the things that has stood the enterprise of higher education above many states. Now, I was not here in 66, 67, or whenever, but I joined maybe 10, 15 years later. And why we are held in such high regard across the nation is that the policy decisions we make are not partisan decisions. They are not pro-TBR or pro-UT, as the perception and perhaps reality was before we had THEC. So if you look at Dr. Smith's presentation this morning, he called balls and strikes just straight down the middle. And that's why we're held in such high regard. So to those who are newer members, I don't think we should just always just in a knee-jerk manner begin to change direction because we are not held in as high regard. I think we should be known by our works. And since you used a biblical reference, I don't think this is in the Bible, but I've always been taught that if you don't feel as close to God as you once did, make no doubt as to who has drifted. I think insofar as the law has permitted, we have stayed close to our mission, but I applaud you for raising this question at such a great time, and I look forward to really deep discussion on it. Thank you, sir.
Any other commissioner comments?
Well, and let me say thank you for those thoughtful comments. I understand, and certainly, Mayor, value your experience. I will say as well something I didn't say before, and that is that I think the commission If we don't look internally and at least examine the concepts of changes that may be needed, we may find next legislative session those changes are made for us. I can tell you that from my personal experience, talking and working with leaders on the Hill, and so I would urge us to be engaged in these decisions, lest we find ourselves having it done for us.
Comptroller Mumpower, Commissioner Allman, just going to tell you, I appreciate your letter and sharing those concerns with everyone, the concerns that have been shared with you, and definitely not putting anything on you, Chairwoman Scarlett, or more on you, I guess I should say. And I was just wondering, has there been a meeting, or is there a meeting that could possibly be scheduled where all parties are kind of in the same room, if you will? So, Chairwoman Scarlett, Comptroller Mumpower, some of the legislators, others, where everybody's kind of in the same room and talking the same, simply because we're hearing the same. Because it seems like there's some conflicting reports, possibly, and those are just some things I'd like to know more about.
Yeah, I think it's the wise next step. Comptroller Mumpower and I spoke about that this morning. I'm hearing conflicting information from what he's hearing, so I think there's value in bringing together the parties and having an open dialogue and conversation. This idea of a working group, it was interesting. I was at a UT leadership event last week, and David Miller asked me the question about programs. And I was like, I wish I had a really good way of responding to what he was saying, because I understand the governing boards and what they go through. But something that the role THEC plays, I'll just provide you a perspective here, and then we can move forward. And this is all in the news, so this could be good or bad, right? So if you think about air traffic controllers, we've all heard the news recently where there's some plane near misses. That's not really a good scene for anyone that's sitting on those airplanes. But essentially, that's a little bit how THEC rolls. We really act as a bit of a centralized coordinator or air traffic controller for what's best for the state, looking at the future of workforce across the entire state, thinking about where the taxpayer dollars go, the total cost, et cetera. So I don't know that that's totally going to go away. I do believe, and to Comptroller Mumpower's perspective, is there's always opportunity for continuous improvement. How can we constantly be looking at, what more, how can we be better as a sector, recognizing this is not about the institutions. Going back to what we talked about earlier, it's about the student. And if it's about the student first, how can we always make it be easier and a more succinct process for that student to be inspired, motivated to attend school, enroll, persist, complete, and fill the jobs of tomorrow and today, for that matter. And there's always opportunity for improvement. And I think Linda Martin, UT Southern, you mentioned to me at that same UT leadership meeting that you had already kind of assessed programs and the program process and how to make it better. I think that sort of information would be really valuable for us to have a broader conversation. What does that look like? Same thing goes for capital. I think there's always opportunities for us to advance and have some sort of continuous improvement loop. But to your point about bringing together the key stakeholders at the state level and having an open, frank conversation about where everyone's settled on THEC, knowing full well that I think what's also important, and to Comptroller Mumpower's point, we haven't really been good at telling our story. And I've had this conversation with the internal team at THEC. We're not out talking about THEC. The team's not out talking about THEC. It's like at some point THEC took a step back and said, okay, we're good. We're not going to talk too much about what we're doing. And I think the internal team recognizes that need to be able to tell the story. If you're not telling the story, somebody else is painting your own picture or writing your own story. And I think that's a challenge. Consistency of being in front of the right stakeholders is really important, especially in an environment like we have today. So,
and Madam Chair, what what a great articulation of why it is so important that quality number one in our next executive director is to be able to establish and maintain strong relationships, because that is the person more than any that will tell the story.
That is true. Everyone in this room should be able to tell the story. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. First, I want to thank Chairman Cope for his wisdom in helping bring Dr. Smith on board. And Dr. Smith, I want to thank you once again for the job you've done and the staff transformation that we have seen. We got a lot of great people here who have a lot of wonderful talents to offer, not just in these halls, well, not these halls necessarily, but in the world of higher education. So we're grateful for them. But I love what you said a moment ago, Chairman. And I think sometimes we get caught up in playing government and playing organization. And it's really about those students. And every process, every transaction, everything we're doing, we all should be thinking about, how does that help some student have access to higher education? How does that help them graduate and move on to the next stage of their life? And we ought to think about everything we're doing and run it through that lens. And then we should also be talking to other stakeholders about, what are we not doing? What void is out there that we should be helping to fill and making those things happen? And I think we're going to see there are some things that we're doing that people are going to look at and say, why have we been doing it that long? And the answer is going to be because we've always done it that way. And then there's going to be some things we're going to look at and say, wow, that's a natural place that we could add value. So I think these are healthy conversations to have. But I'm going to go back to beat a drum I've been beating for over a year, and I know the treasurer's been beating it as well, is if we're really going to take advantage of the great talent that we have among the commissioners around this room and who are not here with us today, we've got to have a committee structure of some sort. There are robust conversations that need to happen more regularly than what happened right now, and instead we're just having them during a 3.5 to 4 hour conversation. And it puts a staff pressure on as well for them to visit with each of us individually and try to think, what did I really hear in that, and how to help try and bring consensus, when instead we could really be driving that and helping and not just helping, we could be setting the vision for where we need staff to go. Because in the absence of those conversations, staff is going to continue to do what they've always done. And there may be great reasons, once again, great reasons to do what we've always done, but that's not a great reason to keep doing them. Let's figure out what we're doing to drive student success. Thank you.
Nathan, would you mind sharing a little bit how the state board is set up as far as our committee structure and other ways?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair and members, I'm sitting here thinking about so many different conversations over time, and Dr. Smith, I got to tell you, I mean, your speech when you gave your executive director's report, I just wrote out, preach it, because it was pretty awesome. It was pretty extraordinary. I know that's not what you asked me, but I've been looking forward to saying that. The State Board of Education, we have in our policies, which is, we have a board meetings policy and a board members policy, and that is effectively our rules of order. And, we use Roberts to supplement those things, but it's what the body decides on. And the chair appoints, sometimes they're called study committees, sometimes they're called subcommittees, but in fact, they're committees of the board. And they're generally consisting of 3 members, and we have an open rule that any other member that wants to come and participate is allowed to. Now, obviously, if the committee is going to report out on something, then it's just those who are appointed to that committee can do that. But what you were talking about, Mr. Secretary, about the spot that it puts staff in, and we're in the same place. With the Open Meetings Act and everything else, members can't speak to each other about anything that's potentially deliberative, and so that means in the case of the State Board of Education, it's 11 separate 1 hour conversations before we get together on anything. And the only exception to that, there's one in the law that says if you're having dinner together, you can talk, but you can't deliberate. But the only place where members can spend some time on these issues which are so important is in these committees. And so you can pick something, and you can determine what members' individual highest points of interest, what their passion is, and put them into the place where they can do the most good, because every bit of that is public, every bit of it's live streamed, and it serves to help build the narrative and to give members a little more time.
Yeah, I'll second what Secretary Hargett said, and each of you sitting here today, as my colleagues, know this is not a new subject about committees on this board. We brought this up, Secretary Hargett did originally, and Tara Scarlett did, and others some time ago. And I said at that time, the treasurer sits on 32 boards and commissions of the state. There are about 10 of those that are major boards and commissions. This is one of them. This is the only major board or commission of the state that I'm aware of that does not have a committee system involved in it. And what does that mean for those who are in the audience, who may not have had this particular role or anything before? It means that when something comes before you, even though the staff does a darn good job of working through the facts and figures and all the rest, and usually making some type of policy recommendation as part of that, that if you as a commissioner on this board have concerns about that, or the depth in which it was gone into, or the approach that was used, or whatever it may be, then the first time you see that is when the briefing book lands on your desk about a week before the commission session. And a lot of times you're not even aware of what the underlying discussion is all about until that point in time. And then you get to the meeting, and since there's been no committee of my trusted colleagues who's looked at this, I'm confronted with a decision about whether I'm going to blow the whole thing up and try to send it back again to the staff, or whether I'm just going to vote for it and move on ahead. And so in that regard, you have to ask yourself whether the action of the commission is in fact the will of the staff, or is it the will of the commission itself? And that's a serious question, especially for a treasurer, in the sense that the state devotes a tremendous portion of its financial resources to higher education in Tennessee. And we are one, along with all of our other colleagues in higher education throughout the state, one of the custodians of that fiduciary duty that the law and the legislature and the governor entrust to us to properly administer those funds. But that proposal that we made some time ago, it hadn't been one iota of movement on it. And so I don't know, I'm one of these people. I believe THEC, does good work generally. I think our staff is good staff, and I think in the past you can look to examples of successes. You can look back to the day, I've been on this board 15 years, that's how long I've been treasurer, and we had like the outcomes-based formula task force / committee that Dr. Russ Deaton was in charge of from an administrative standpoint, and it involved not only people on this commission, I was one of them, but also people from throughout higher education that were affected by it. They participated actively in that task force, and it produced, something that has raised Tennessee's stature among higher education entities, not just in Tennessee, but all across the United States, because we're one of the states in the union who's somewhat getting it right in that regard. You can look at the work that the staff and THEC has done in the past in the area of transfer credits. When I first came here 15 years ago, it was a bizarre mess about transferring credits. I could tell that, and I wasn't even a higher education professional. And there's been a lot of streamlining work done. And that doesn't mean there's not more work that needs to be done now, and there probably is. But we've had some successes. But those successes have come when we've had study beyond just simply a staff recommendation. Those things have been achieved by an effort that involves more than one set of minds on it. So from that standpoint, I think I do agree with the comptroller that if we don't alter course on THEC, you may get something that you're not expecting at some point along the way here. Because right now, there is that serious issue, as I said, about in many of the cases, is it the will of the staff that we're voting on and acting upon in the action of the council, or is it the action of the commission? Thank you.
Madam Chair, one other point to think about is that, when you've got a body that's got the massive trust from the people that the Higher Education Commission has, the same with the State Board of Education, without having a committee structure in place, it's a little difficult to go back, and in our case at least, to revisit the rules that have been passed. And all you have to do is watch Government Ops, and we're there every month because we do a lot of rule passing at the state board level. But over and above simply passing it on the front end, you're not really able to analyze the effect of it if you don't, on kind of a routine basis, have the chance to go back and look at the decisions and what has the effect been. And those committees provide that great opportunity even to just kind of shine a spotlight, so you can say, hey, we've been doing this for 12 years. It didn't turn out quite as we were told, or it did turn out as we were told, and we need to give some kudos there. So, for what it's worth.
Madam Chair, I was certainly struck by the Secretary's comments there when you talk about, the end result for the students. And I know I'm not there, and I don't know if there's anyone still from the university community in the audience, but I would like to hear from the universities. I know I heard President Boyd speak earlier. I don't know if he's still there, or if there are leaders from TBR, or, obviously, because you're at their place, there probably are. Is there anybody from the university community that would like to chime in? I would appreciate your thought on the issues I've raised or anything related.
Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. First off, I've got a whole page of notes. I'm not going to talk to all of them, but I just want to maybe share one thing as a preface and then make a couple of points, and then I think answer the question at hand about the universities and the community colleges and technical colleges' reaction to the comptroller's letter. So the little bit of historical perspective. I started working for the governor in 2013 in THEC's office for a year. It was the most pivotal year of my life. We created things like the Drive to 55 and Tennessee Promise. I got to come back as the chairman. I was also on THEC that year in 2013 on the commission. Got to come back as the chair for 2014. While I was commissioner of economic and community development, came and worked with you guys on with the commission on multiple occasions. And now I've been president of the University of Tennessee for 5 years, attending all these meetings. So I just share that to say that two things. One, I have a great appreciation and admiration for THEC and the work that you do, and for all the teammates that work within THEC. And second, to say that this is a point that I'd like for you to consider. In all of that time, up until the last 2 years, at every one of the meetings, the universities, the community colleges, the TBR, and the LGI, so in the last, since the Focus Act, have always had the opportunity to come and speak. And I've been struck by the last 2 years that we're never invited to the table to talk. And so we talk about wanting to be student-focused. Who's the closest to the students? It's the universities. So if you really want to hear what's happening with the students and the work that we're doing with the students, it would be great if we were actually able to come and present to you and share some data directly from the campus perspectives. So having said that, just to come to the point, I've surveyed all the LGI presidents and TBR, and we've talked through the comptroller's letter, and we all 100% agree on everything that he recommended. With some caveats, I think, as someone suggested, there needs to be a working group in talking through some of the guardrails, for example, on academic programs. I'm struck today by the fact that we spent close to a year getting approval for the combining of 2 programs in nursing that had already been approved, that had been accredited by the nursing body, and yet it takes a year to actually be able to implement those. This is a program that could be changing lives and making a difference for students a year ago that's taken an extra year because of this extra time. for programs that were already approved. And you have to, this will be for you to decide, but think about what extra value we had in waiting this year to have this conversation today about that program. For us, I think, I'm going to speak for the LGIs and TPR, and they're welcome to come up and correct me if I get anything wrong. But as we think about the things that THEC does great, and has already been said, on the data analysis, we need somebody that can be that fair broker that can pull all the information together, to think it through, to dissect it, disseminate it. They do a fantastic job. Through financial aid, doing a fantastic job of providing hope and all the other different aids and programs that we have. And also from thought leadership, from the momentum year this past year back to when Russ Deaton was at THEC and creating the funding formula, which was a brilliant idea. There's been so many initiatives. Today, Dr. Smith mentioned the idea of bringing us all together to think about transfer pathways. And I might suggest, let's think more broadly. Let's think about more broader collaborations between the universities and the community colleges, not just transfer pathways, but how could we work closer together on things like student information systems. Dr. Deaton and I have talked about, what if we all had the same student information system, not just the universities, but the community colleges and the technical colleges? What if we had dual admission policies? So I love the idea of THEC leading the way on that. The things that we feel like add cost and add time, delay our ability to react to the marketplace and to students is the approval for academic programs. Now, there should be some guardrails around maybe not creating a new college or something that's going to cost the state a lot of potential expense or risk. But within certain guardrails, giving more freedom to the campuses to make those decisions. Then around capital projects, as we know, and I had a conversation just yesterday with Chairman Watson about the rising costs of all of our capital projects. If we delay a project for a year, it can add 20% of the cost. We're adding hundreds of millions of dollars to the cost of capital projects by delaying for the additional time it takes us to get some of these things approved. So these are real dollars to the state. It's a real ability to react to the market. One last thing, I'll just say that we are close to the market. We know our customer. We know what the marketplace needs. And Dr. Smith, it may have been an omission or maybe I just misheard, but I heard one comment about the fact that THEC and TBR are the only ones close to the industry and workplace. We're all, I believe every one of the LGI presidents and myself almost fell out of our chair. We work day and night working closely with our partners in the workforce. The Department of Education called us to create a Grow Your Own program to fill the teacher shortage. We have at UT Knoxville shared space with Volkswagen and Bell Helicopter and AT&T. A group of us are going from Chattanooga and Knoxville over to visit with Volkswagen in Germany, working on their future labor needs here and research projects. I could go on, but the collaboration between the universities and the workforce is really close. And that's how we, as you heard from the programs we recommended today, how we come up with those programs because we're so close to the market. So again, just in conclusion, thank you for giving us the opportunity to make a comment or two. And I'll maybe defer to Russ or anybody else that would like to maybe come up and speak for the universities.
Members of the Commission, I want to first and foremost make sure I faithfully represent Chancellor Tiding's views of this, and I think I do in saying that she finds a lot to like and react well to that was in the letter. I do appreciate hearing the Comptroller's explanation today about some of the nuances that potentially can be brought to bear around, say, program approval that incorporates mission. All of which reminds me of something that, watching the Commission from both front row and back row for a few years now, that someone said to me once, which is the Commission's best role is to be between and among the boards and fill those policy spaces to bring us together to be the sinews, if you will, of higher education. And I think that letter gets us well on our way to doing so.
Thank you both for speaking up on behalf of the colleges and universities. Certainly provides good perspective. I still go back to this concept of air traffic controller. If you have the Dreamliner versus the propeller planes versus the 747s, who gets to land on the airstrip first? Because the Dreamliner is the largest, propeller planes are the smallest, and there's differences in all of them and how they're all kept up. And I can equate that very similar to the colleges and universities. I do think there's a really important, I do agree with the committee structure concept. I know we have the audit committee, we have the search committee, but I think we've got to have a broader conversation about the role higher education plays in the future and the role that THEC plays within that as well. The guardrail concept that Comptroller Mumpire mentioned, conversations that we've had, the conversations that certainly the State Board of Education, how they operate, I think there's a fine balance in between there. So I would welcome it if anyone from the commission would be willing to be part of a working group to go through this discovery. It's not just the commission members, but it would be a broader working group to further determine where we can have continuous improvement within the way that we're operating, and how to be better partners with the stakeholders that we engage with and the ones that we should be supporting. So I welcome any sort of thoughts on creating I guess maybe a strategic group to talk about this.
Madam Chair, is Dr. Brian Noland in the room? I know
He
that
is not here
has
today.
okay. Well, he has some experience with THEC, and I would have wanted to hear from him, but we'll do that another time. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will say that as a member of the commission, it is difficult for me to really grasp all of the underlying matters as controllers talked about in terms of what happens when you're not in this meeting. And so I do think that a committee structure is beneficial of some sort to help us make sure that we understand all of the issues and the day-to-day conversations that go on that we don't have the benefit of by coming to this room or a room together once a quarter. So I'd be interested in having more conversation about that.
Well, and let me say that to the commissioner's comment, we are all appointed to this board by someone, or the treasurer, the secretary, and I by statute. But we all have an appointing authority, and I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to establish a good regular contact with our appointing authority to make sure that we understand their vision too, and which I'm sure is inherent to why they appointed us. And I think that's where you'll find some of those more real and direct conversations can happen. So I agree with exactly what you asked for. You need to have that input. That's very important.
I'll just make a couple of comments, and hopefully I think everybody can agree that we need the introspection, and that's what you started with, Chairwoman Scarlett, when you first started your comments. But I also want to just put a reminder out there to everyone that this commission was voted one of the best commission within the past 5 years. So I do believe that you do need to have that introspection. There does need to be conversations of how we better improve the processes. I agree that it shouldn't take a year to do things. Everybody who's had any work done at their house knows if you had a project last year, it's way more expensive this year. So all of those things I do think are important to discuss and bring up. And but I also don't necessarily agree that just completely changing the process within a short period of time without having some real introspection and some real discussion about it is the best approach. That's just my perspective. Thanks.
I think a logical next step to Commissioner Winton's comment earlier, and also Comptroller Mumpauer, is for us to have a broader conversation among leaders at THEC, the speaker's governor's office, and have kind of a setting of the table. That's on one side from next step. And additionally, I do think there's value in us creating a couple of committees that can help us go down the pathway of identifying what opportunities exist and having kind of further knowledge. One of those would be, in my view, access and completion and the other one would be probably tied to capital. But I'd welcome any sort of inputs that anyone else might have, and it could be a further conversation. But the more we keep pushing this conversation down the line, the longer it'll take.
And Madam Chair, the education chairs would be important for that too.
Yes.
Chairman Lundberg and Chairman White.
Agree. So should we start with that first meeting, and then we can come back and have another conversation about committee structure, or would anyone like to make a motion for a committee structure? Okay. I'm being told by legal counsel that we're a little bit early on that.
That said, if you want to have a fiscal committee and at least poll them informally now, if those are the two subject matter areas, we can prepare a proposal.
Okay. Well, then I will poll all of you to see if those would be the two committees that make logical sense. Treasurer Lillard, what do you think?
Well, I think that, like council does, we didn't notice this as a public hearing today, and we didn't notice it as a major shift in the commission structure today. So from that standpoint, I think it's better to try to back up and get some kind of proposal together, either by a group or committee of the board getting together or whatever you decide as chair. I think progress is needed, in this area. So obviously if we can get on that path, that would be good. I've run out of time today is the other thing. I've got to leave. So I appreciate my colleagues' thoughts on this subject and everything, and Comptroller Mumpower's comments. I just closed my remarks by saying that there has been a lot of good work done by THEC over the last 15 years that I've been on it, as I alluded to during my remarks. And the question is how we, as President Boyd said, improve on it substantially going forward. Delay and things like that cost money, as some of the commissioners have pointed out. So if we can attack some of those things, that would be good. But at the root of the whole thing is, just as I said during my remarks, we have to get to the point where every commissioner believes that the judgment of the commission represents that commissioner's judgment, and not necessarily solely just the recommendation of the staff, and that's where we are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. So given legal counsel, I think we can just take this under advisement as we prepare to move to a follow-up, I think would be beneficial. Unless there's any other business, then I will adjourn our meeting. Thank you. I know. This concludes our agenda. The next regular scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission will be Thursday, November 16th of this year. If there's no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.